Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Cleave to Antiquity. My name is Ben, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. What's going on, man? Host of World War Now and several other things.
It's good to be here, Ben. I've been following your show, especially ever since your announcement with Father Peter and coming to Holy Orthodoxy. So it's great to be here. As someone who's enjoyed the content, it feels good to be part of it.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on, man. This will be an interesting talk. I've been discussing the Ukraine crisis for quite some time. Later on this month, I'm going to have a journalist from the UOJ on to talk about the same thing. So this is something that I've been following for a little while now, especially since they had that delegation going to DC and all of that stuff was going on, and a lot of the slander that was going on is towards the American Orthodox clergymen. It was crazy to see that whole situation unfold. But for those in the audience that are unfamiliar with who you are, you want to just go ahead and do like a brief introduction?
Sure. So my name's Conrad Franz. I host the World War Now podcast. It's on Substack. You can find it at worldwarnow.co. We do multiple weekly shows there, a weekly free show called World War Now, all about geopolitics from an Orthodox perspective, what we consider the ongoing Third World War. Again, through the perspective of Orthodox Christian prophecy, rising multipolarity. We also have another weekly show for our paid subscribers called Ether Hour, where we interview people. That's where we have people like Father Peter, other priests, all sorts of really interesting Orthodox, some not Orthodox, but historical, political guests that talk about not necessarily news-related subjects. I also do a lot of traveling for the journalism on the show. Last year in 2025, I went to the Donbas, to the front line of the war zone in Russia, Ukraine, also around a bunch of other holy sites in Russia. I went to Moldova to investigate the church persecution there, which has also been ongoing. I was just on RT talking about that. I've also been to Cyprus, Greece, Mount Athos to talk to some holy elders and bishops like Metropolitan Neophytos of Morphu about the subject matter that I cover on the show. So that's pretty much who I am. I'm an Orthodox convert, much like you will soon be, Ben. So one of the many Anglo-Saxons here that about 6 years ago. So part of the right before COVID. So I technically beat the huge COVID wave of converts. So I'm a breed of my own in that regard.
We got a comment here. Father Peter, who's his bishop? There you go. We answer that question,
Bishop Nikolai of Romania. We can answer the
go.
question now.
There you go. Congratulations to Father Peter here. That's so awesome. We've been praying for that for a while. To see that come to fruition, God truly answers prayers. It's a beautiful thing, man. Hey, if you're watching the show, do me a favor. I posted a post on X saying that we're going live. Go ahead and retweet that for me so we can get some people in the lobby. I know we're competing with a couple other live streams right now, so go ahead and see if we can pump up the numbers in the chat. If you haven't already, go ahead and give me a big thumbs up, like the video, share the video. Let's get some people in here. This is going to be some deep, in-depth information, stuff that they will not tell you in the West about Ukraine. I was having a conversation with somebody at my gym. I do jujitsu, and one of the cradle Ukrainian was telling me that the stuff that they report in the news in the West about the Ukrainian conflict is completely false. Cradle Ukrainians know that the government over there is corrupt. They know what is going on. They know the persecution. They hear it from their family members that are still over there. They know they are snatching up people in vans to go and put them on the front lines. They know exactly what they're doing, right? So, but the West will not report on this. This is not something that you're going to hear in the mainstream media news. This is something that you're going to hear here on this channel and on channels like World War Now. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to his channel. Awesome, awesome geopolitical content. This is going to be some in-depth reporting. You're not going to want to miss it. So I appreciate you coming on the show. Let's dive into this stuff, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, the Ukraine persecution issue is, again, there's Christian persecution in places like the Middle East by Muslims in Nigeria and these other places, but this is the kind of persecution that Christians and conservatives in America heard about in the Cold War and in the early days of the Soviet Union and the again, we've all seen the videos, masked police, secret police, people that won't show their IDs with masks, that we don't know if they're even affiliated with the government or if they're private individuals. They storm churches, they put locks on properties, they beat people up. At this point, several bishops have been bloodied and bruised in confrontations, priests, countless numbers of people. And none of this even includes the forced mobilization, where they will find monks, even bishops, priests, seminarians of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and mobilize them towards the front line to take them out of to defend their local communities. And for those that don't know, I know it's a bit of a complicated situation. I know when I became Orthodox, I was a catechumen in 2019, 1 year after the schismatic group in Ukraine was recognized by the Ecumenical Patriarch. And I remember looking into it and being like, this is confusing. I don't know what a lot of this means, but it's really not too confusing if someone who actually understands breaks it down. And it's just that in Ukraine, the church is an autonomous church within the Russian Orthodox Church, much like the Japanese Orthodox Church, the Moldovan Orthodox Church, and a few other churches that have their own synods, but are still technically underneath the umbrella of the Moscow Patriarchate, even if only in commemoration. And that church was in Ukraine, headed by Metropolitan Onufry, called the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Of course, then the Ecumenical Patriarch in 2018 of Constantinople, without any approval from Russia or any of the other churches, found a schismatic group and gave them autocephaly, meaning they're now completely independent. They're just as independent as the Church of Greece, or as the Orthodox Church in America, or as the Church of Bulgaria, or any other autocephalous church. Only not really, because all of the Ukrainian diaspora churches then immediately went under control of Constantinople, and in reality, Constantinople still very much has control over them. So this schismatic body was created, given legitimacy by the Ecumenical Patriarch, and the rest of the Orthodox world was basically left to pick up the pieces, where this new schism between basically the two giants of Orthodoxy, the huge Russian Orthodox Church, which has over 50% of the Orthodox bishops in the world, and then, of course, the Ecumenical Patriarch, ostensibly first among equals, who, back in the times of the empire was the see. And so we have these two groups that are now not in communion with each other anymore, and it leaves people like me in the Antiochian Church, people in the Serbian Church, and these other groups that are in communion with both Russia and Constantinople, having to look at what to do. And as far as I can tell, only the Greek churches, meaning Alexandria, the Church of Greece itself, and of course, the Church of Cyprus and the other churches that are immediately around the Ecumenical Patriarchate, they have supported the schismatic body. But Antioch, Bulgaria, Georgia, a lot of the other Orthodox churches, for example, have stood strong with Metropolitan Onufry. And even just recently, for recent news updates, the Ukrainian schismatics and the government have announced that they will be seizing the Cherkasy Cathedral. It's a little bit more in central or eastern Ukraine. Metropolitan Theodosi of Cherkasy, one of the most long-suffering bishops in the church in Ukraine, will be having his cathedral effectively stolen from him. And again, I don't know what exactly is going to happen to him. I'm sure he'll have to find another place to worship with his flock. But before I finish my monologue here, people need to realize there's been reports, even by the pro-government news sources in Ukraine, that go to the churches that have been stolen from the canonical church, and they're empty. Nobody wants to go to them. Meanwhile, you go to whatever place that the canonical church is worshiping, and you'll see it's packed, and you'll see that the people there are, not only are they not being intimidated, but in fact are flocking to church in greater numbers because of the persecution, because I think people know that where there is this persecution, that is actually where Christ's church is.
Yeah. So one thing that we notice in Ukraine, which is leading to a lot of the persecution, are the UOC. The UOC is for those that are watching, the UOC is the Canonical Orthodox Church. The OCU is the kind of state-run schismatic church that was given the tomos from the EP. Now, what we actually see in Ukraine is that they've revoked the UOC's rights to be called a church. They've revoked their rights. So they are drafting their clergy. They are grabbing their clergy off the street, making them fight in the front lines. They're grabbing bishops. They're imprisoning bishops. We've seen metropolitans imprisoned. We've seen churches stolen. We have footage of churches being stolen in real time, and this is still happening today. It seems like every week we have new reports. If you go follow the UOJ, you can see new reports just about every week of the OCU's intentions to steal another church. What they do basically is they'll go in and they will use Ukrainian military to go in and occupy these churches, and then they'll move the fake schismatic church in. to basically run services or desecrate the place. And we have video footage of many of these instances going on. I'm going to share one video. I've showed this before on the show. It's not graphic, not too graphic, but this is what goes on over there. So let's go ahead and take a look. So this is what we see. We see this day in and day out. Zelensky's guys go in waving guns, waving bats, waving all sorts of stuff. I mean, you can hear elderly women in the background screaming, trying to, defend their church, trying to keep their church. And they're forcing these people out of their places of worship. And often they're desecrating the place. We have reports of the Zelensky's guys defecating on the altar in churches, slashing icons, attacking old women, beating bishops over the head. One received a concussion. I'm sure you remember that. That wasn't that long ago. But we see this time and time again. And if you have any other footage that's not too graphic, we can pull it up on the screen here. But this is going on, and the West isn't reporting on this at all. This is completely radio silent from Western media. Why do you think that is?
Well, at the end of the day, it's the major contradiction where the war that's going on is constantly portrayed as the free West and the aspirationally Western Ukraine versus the oppressive totalitarian, whether it be from a communist perspective or a Russian imperial perspective or some kind of made-up Russian fascist perspective where Putin is a second Hitler. That's the dialectic but if you see footage of the Ukrainians, the supposedly pro-freedom liberal Western party doing these sorts of things and creating these images where there's people inside churches pointing guns at Christians that make even the most ostensibly ardent MSNBC viewer in America be like, oh no, maybe there's more to this than I think. That's why the reason they can't have these sorts. I mean, I just read a report just today that was addressing what you were talking about, how, for example, the Society of St. John, the Union of Orthodox Journalists, a lot of these groups with clergy went to discuss the persecution issue in DC with representatives. And now there have been reports from Ukraine and from other Western-backed think tanks talking all about how this religious freedom line is being weaponized and how it needs to ultimately be snuffed out. Like, you need to it was a paper that was directly saying that those who use the Ukraine church persecution and talk about religious freedom issues against the Ukrainian government need to be treated like Russian agents, just like anybody else would be. And of course, that's absurd. The idea that there could be people that are pro-Ukraine that would have this position and still want to not see this persecution happen. So it's very much an inconvenient reality for the globalist powers that be. And if you check out my the World War Now Twitter page, you can find a clip. I went on RT, and this is fascinating. Most people don't even know much about this, is that in Moldova, this is happening as well. And of course, Ukraine is where it's happening the worst, but Ukraine wants to join the European Union. Moldova also wants to join the European Union. And unfortunately, the Moldovan church is also much like the Ukrainian church. It is autonomous, but under the Russian church. And because of that, the powers that be in Moldova have basically been informed by the EU that unless they drive those guys out, get them to abandon, go into schism with the Russians, get them to fully join up with this new Romanian, the Bessarabian Metropolia. It's another complex situation in Moldova. They have to do that because even a traditional Orthodox church, even if it is even vaguely associated with Russia, is considered too much for them. And frankly, the church in Moldova has consistently stood against gay pride parades, homosexual adoption, all sorts of other globalist nonsense. And the EU views it, and Moldova views them as an obstacle to EU integration. So ultimately, the church once again stands as sort of a last bastion against globalism that the powers that be need to kind of wipe out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You see this kind of dialectic being played out even by American politicians that are trying to drive a wedge between the EP, the MP, and they're trying to use this as a way to kind of force out the one side of the issue. The EP, we already know. I've done multiple different shows on their ties to the CIA. their ties to American interests. So, of course, this is the dialectic that the CIA would want to push. I mean, any kind of subversive agency can see the benefit of using this as some kind of soft power platform. Matthew Namey, who has done multiple different shows on ancient faith and other platforms, has an excellent article detailing the history of this, dating all the way back to the time of Athenagoras, where the CIA has infiltrated and has basically helped take down the previous EP and elect a new ecumenical patriarch that was more in line with the CIA's mission. And there's direct statements from Athenagoras before he was the ecumenical patriarch saying, I have X amount of bishops, I have X amount of priests. This was to the precursor to the CIA, the director of the OSS, in a letter that is declassified. He says, I have this many priests, this many bishops. Anything you want me to do, we will do it without question. Without question. If that's not the individual being subverted by that agency, I don't know what you could say is, right? What else do you have to show? And then there's shortly after he makes a statement, he gets flown out to meet Truman. This was when he was the archbishop. He gets flown out to meet Truman. You have the famous picture of Athenagoras kissing Truman's head. And then guess what happens? Shortly after that, he's made ecumenical patriarch. Do you think those ties just go away? Do you think those ties go away as soon as the next ecumenical patriarch is elected? No, they stay in. Those ties stay in. The CIA doesn't just let their hooks out of you, right? They're going to continue to apply pressure. And this is actually what other metropolitans have said led to the tomos that he gave to the Ukrainians. They said external pressure from his quote unquote handlers. That's what they said. I forget which metropolitan that was. You might know. But metropolitans have commented on this as well. But here's one more video I'm going to show y'all about these Ukraine church raids. So again, yellow bands. These are Zelensky's guys raiding the churches in Ukraine, occupying them. And we actually have video footage of an intercepted interview from Ukrainian propagandists stating that they need to stop. They need to stop posting so many photos from Ukraine because they're accidentally posting photos of Zelensky's troops staging in destroyed churches that they blew up, that they destroyed. So they have admitted that this is what they're doing. So this is not propaganda. This is admitted from their own mouth. Let's take a look. So then, again, as you can see, Zelensky's troops going in, beating up the parishioners, beating up the Christians that want to remain in their church and not have it occupied by the government. This is persecution of Christians by a false schismatic church that was granted a tomos by a patriarch that has been subverted by the CIA. This is basically what we're dealing with at this point. And Christian clergy are paying the price for it. If you're on any of these platforms where you can see footage from this event, you would know clergy are pretty much being unalived. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare situation. But go ahead.
No, it really is. And the unfortunate reality is that a lot of American religious people sort of bear responsibility for this. There's a lot of evangelical leaders, a lot of Christian people, even in the conservative evangelical Christian Southern Baptist type movement, that have, openly come to bat for the schismatics, that have openly, lobbied President Trump, said that all these people claiming that there's persecution in Ukraine, that's Russian propaganda, that's Kremlin propaganda. You need to, support the government there. Because again, not only has the Tomos of autocephaly to the OCU, and the liberalization and the globalization of the government, the aspirationally European Union government in Ukraine, opened up space for this schismatic group. But it has also opened up space for all sorts of Western cults and religious shysters to come in. Look, Eastern Europe, everybody knows this. I'm sure you're aware, Ben. There's all sorts of scandalous nonsense going on with Christian missionary work and even human trafficking. I mean, we saw this going on with some Harvest International people recently, all sorts of other interesting things. And of course, again, I'm no there's not that everything in Russia is perfect, for example, but
Right.
one of the things Russia gets criticized for is that there's no religious freedom there. But at a certain level, that's a good thing. You know who isn't in Russia? Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, because not only are they classified as a cult in Russia, but they've been proven to be collaborators with the CIA, and basically work with American intelligence. And unfortunately, a lot of good religious people in America get duped into supporting that sort of thing because they just think that they want to bring their version of low church evangelicalism to historically Orthodox lands, and then they find themselves, first of all, just supporting evil nonsense like this directly, but even more unfortunately, having their tithes and money going to these shady networks that facilitate this kind of behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. That would be the big concern for me is, if I'm tithing to my church, is it going to supporting persecution of Christians worldwide? And look, I'm not saying there's anything. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying anything bad about Greek Orthodox people as a whole. Not at all. I love my Greek Orthodox brothers and sisters. There are so many amazing Greek priests that I've spoken to that have given me wisdom that just blows my mind. Some of my favorite people in the world are Greek Orthodox priests. So again, nothing against anyone like that. We've had discussions on this exact subject where we've discussed some of the corruption of the EP, and I've had Greek Orthodox priests that are local to me pull me aside, meet me in real life, and say, "You are absolutely correct. You're 100% correct. And if ABC 123 happened, this is what we would do." Like we're in agreement with you. So your local Greek priest is probably going to be pretty based. But the unfortunate reality though is the position itself has historical ties to the CIA. So we have to be aware of what we're dealing with and not pretend and cover stuff up like the Roman Catholics do. Roman Catholics will just cover up everything. There's no ties to anything. This is a lie. The Epstein files don't talk about Catholic charities. The Epstein files don't talk about Pope JP2. The Epstein files don't talk about Francis. Let's cover it up, cover it up, cover it up. No ties, no ties, no ties. See, we don't play that game here. We want you to be informed. We don't want to lie to you, even when it's inconvenient to us, because you know what happens when we lie? This stuff happens, and Christians get persecuted, and Christians suffer, and they get kicked out of their churches, and we have a basically state-run military supporting a schismatic, propped-up fake church going in and occupying their churches and kicking them out by force. So I don't want to be a part of that. So we're going to speak the truth on this platform, and I encourage you all to do the same.
No, really quick before you maybe play this one video, Ben, people need to be aware that not only are these schismatics just people that wanted to go a different political way and broke away from the Moscow Patriarchate, these are defrocked. These people in the eyes of the church are laymen. This metropolitan of the OCU, Metropolitan Epiphany Dumenko, that guy is named Sergei Dumenko, and calling him anything else is wrong because he's not a bishop. He's a fake priest. He's a fake bishop. Again, in the eyes of God, the Holy Spirit, and the church, he is just a guy. So having him dress up and do all this stuff just because the EP said he could, it's a very distressing and unfortunate situation. That is one of those things that a lot of people are talking about, the need for another ecumenical council, and I think that is very accurate. But I've been to Russia several times. Like I said, I've been to the Donbas, and I've talked to a lot of priests that obviously feel very strongly about the situation in Ukraine, because Ukrainian and Russians, I mean, they're basically the same brotherly people, have a lot of similarities, a lot of intermarriage and traveling between those places. And they tell me all these horrible stories, and they have friends that are being persecuted, and they disappoint them so much that they can't go, and these Russian priests go and concelebrate and commune with their Greek Orthodox brothers. But for example, I'm a big fan of Elder Ephraim and his monasteries across America and Canada. I visit one very regularly, and eventually a lot of the Russian priests I talk to in Russia find out about this, and they always say the same thing. They're like, "Oh, don't even like. Obviously, you can go, like, we tell every Russian to go to Elder Ephraim's monasteries. Even it doesn't matter that they're under the EP. We know that they're the best, and we know that they support the canonical church and all this kind of stuff. And it's the same with most of the churches on Mount Athos. Obviously, even though they're under the EP, they still completely support the canonical church. So I think if this once this is brought up, in an ecumenical sense and is really dealt with, both the people, the priests, and then obviously the worldwide bishops, I think are all on the right side here. So no reason to despair.
Yep, absolutely. There was an article not that long ago where I guess a couple of the metropolitans were calling for a synod to be held on the issue of Ukraine. So that might actually be something in the works coming up soon. We might actually see a synod addressing the issue of this horrible atrocity that is going on in Ukraine. And it's honestly needed. It's the only way. It's the only way that we see justice in these types of situations. So, before I play this video, why don't you give us a little context, and then we'll dive into this.
Sure. Like you said, everyone's seeing the videos from Ukraine. It's kind of shocking the world to the point where even a lot of Protestants and Catholics in the West are like, okay, what are we doing here? This is ridiculous. But people aren't noticing what's going on in Moldova because there's no war going on in Moldova, right? It's on the other side of Ukraine, no Russian troops there, besides maybe the troops stationed in Transnistria, which is another complicated situation. But Moldova, most Christian country in Europe, some 96 to 98% Christian, vast majority Orthodox. Again, much like Ukraine, the Orthodox Church of Moldova is autonomous with its own synod, but nonetheless still under the omophorion of Patriarch Kirill of the Moscow Patriarchate. And Moldova, aspiring to the EU, they are trying to, and this is another unfortunate point, much like the Ecumenical Patriarchate is unfortunately involved in this nonsense in Ukraine, the Romanian church now is unfortunately somewhat involved in this nonsense in Moldova. There's this Bessarabian metropolia, which is effectively encroaching on the canonical territory of the Moldovan Orthodox Church and poaching parishes. Because in Moldova, it's a big split between whether they want to be an independent country more in the Russian sphere of influence, or if they want to like physically just join Romania and make Romania even bigger. So that's what's going on there. And the Moldovan government currently very liberal. They are, they're the government that hosts these pride parades, despite the fact that people will come and counter protest and all this other stuff. So it's an unfortunate situation. Another globalism being foisted upon an Orthodox people. But I went to Moldova and I went to several parishes and bishops and interviewed priests and older people and parishioners who have had their parishes stolen from them. They've been persecuted. I don't say this in the interview, but some young men who are sort of part of a men's group at their parish, athletic boxing guys, they do those sorts of things. They've had like masked men come up with them as they're closing up their church at night and say, hey, if you don't stop what you're doing, next time you see us, we're breaking your legs, like these
Right.
kinds of situations. And there's no recourse because those guys work for the government. So what are you going to do? Call the police? So
Yeah.
it's a very unfortunate situation. And again, even though most services in Moldova are held in the Moldovan Romanian language, there's still several parishes that do it in Russian Slavonic because there are people there that's how they want to worship, and those churches are very much persecuted. So that's what this clip, or I went on RT the other day, I discussed that on here.
All right, so we'll dive into this and check out this clip. But before I do so, let me remind the audience, go ahead and like and share the video. And if you would like to support this show, there is a super chat goal. So far, we're 30 minutes in. 0 super chats. Come on, guys. Support the show. I appreciate it.
Don't do me like that, guys. I can't be
the
the 0 super chat guest. Come on.
That's right. Come on. Don't. But I know I appreciate y'all. We're gonna dive into this. Again, this is stuff that's not being reported on in the West. This is something that you're only going to see on channels like this one, channels like World War Now. People that actually are speaking to people on the ground. So this is something you're not going to see in mainstream media, but you have to be updated on this info. You cannot stick your head in the ground like an ostrich and pretend that's not happening. So let's dive into this clip and check out some of this discussion here.
I'd just like to hear your reaction to the government's actions against the Moldovan Orthodox Church in Derno.
It's unfortunate to say the least, but I hate to say that it's not surprising because the Moldovan government has been regrettably following the path of Ukraine, where Ukraine, even before, of course, the special military operation began in 2022, was persecuting the canonical church there on behalf of the government, collaborating with the schismatic fake OCU, Orthodox Church in Ukraine, as it is called. The same thing is now happening in Moldova, who also has aspirations to join the European Union, and part of that means to completely de-Russify themselves in all ways, even if that includes persecuting, Moldovan citizens and good Christian people. And many Moldovans speak Russian, so once again, those few parishes, and it is not the majority of parishes of the canonical Moldovan Church that offer services in Russian and Slavonic, they are being persecuted just for, much like we heard in Ukraine, for using the Russian and Slavonic languages. And I myself visited the the village of Granati, just in the north part of Moldova, north of Deredeu, and they've had a similar situation where their priest was bribed by the Bessarabian metropolis, whereas the parishioners wanted to stay with the canonical church. And as the parishioners the church sent them a new priest, and they were trying to do services, the old priest stole the church bells, locked the church, cut the power off, and has been squatting in the rectory, living there, preventing the new priest from living there with his family. So unfortunately, this is a continued pattern from the Moldovan government of supporting the actions, and it's regrettable that the Romanian Orthodox Church, who is in communion with the Russian Orthodox Church to this day, is supporting these actions by the Bessarabian Metropolia. And
just a couple of comments on that real quick, because this is something to be aware of. Now, the Ecumenical Patriarch actually denies that he's had any communications with the Montenegrin schismatics. But just recently on UOJ, the Union of Orthodox Journalists, they have published evidence, photographic evidence of, representatives from the EP actually speaking with representatives of the Montenegrin schismatics. So if they grant the Tomos there, that could potentially disrupt and destabilize the Serbian Orthodox. And this would cause another Ukraine type crisis, but in another, guess what? It seems like they're just out to destabilize the Balkans. I mean,
well, look, you've got Romania messing with Moldova, you've got
Yeah.
EP messing with Ukraine, you've got the EP, like you just said, apparently messing with Montenegro, so they're messing with the Serbs. You have the EP messing around in Estonia and Latvia, doing the same kind of thing, because those countries obviously hate Russia, so the government's going to support some kind of EP schismatic type church. It's like, what's next? And of course, like you mentioned, the people that met with the EP representatives that met with the Montenegrins, those are the Finnish Orthodox Church. And man, we could do a whole stream on the Finnish Orthodox Church,
Right.
man. Those guys suck. I'm sorry. Like, those guys are not good. They've got the whole gluten-free Eucharist thing. They do all this ecumenical stuff with like the female bishops in the Lutheran Church there. They obviously hate Russia. They're on the Gregorian calendar, not the revised Julian, the Gregorian. Like, they don't even do Pascha on the same day as the rest of us. So it's a totally messed up situation over there. But Moldova, it's a real
Finland is a mess for religion, period, because they have basically anti-religious laws. You can't even affirm that men are men and women are women, and if you say that, you'll actually go to prison. It's insane. It's dystopian.
Yeah, and the tragic thing about Moldova is it's a beautiful country and extremely Christian, obviously not rich for European standards, but deep soul, a lot of saints, so many incredible monasteries with incredible choirs. And it's just unfortunate that there are enough people there and enough NGOs and the powers that be are effective enough there that they want to leave that all behind for some some multicultural future with Europe.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the deal. Well, I mean, we know what the deal is. This is the same. This is the same nonsense that we've seen the CIA push basically everywhere. We've seen them as soon as they got their hooks in the Vatican. This is exactly what they push in the Roman Catholic Church. We see this with Vatican II. Their ties go back to the Cold War, which is the same exact time that they sunk their teeth into the EP. So they were doing all of these types of operations trying to subvert religious institutions. They had long since done this with Protestant mainline institutions. The Episcopal Church was already infiltrated by the government through their Freemasonic ties. George Washington himself was a prominent member of the Episcopal Church, and he was a notorious Freemason. When he was accepted as the president, in his letters that he wrote. As soon as he was accepted, he wrote back to his lodge and he said, "I will always act in the best interest of the lodge in which I am a member." So, I mean, we see this type of subversion time and time and time again of religious institutions, tying back to the CIA and the United States government. So, and I'm not saying, like, look, I love America. This is the best country in the world, in my opinion. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Okay. It has its issues. I think the CIA should probably go away. But I'm not saying I'm anti-American. Don't get the wrong opinion here. I love America. I want America to be holy. I want America to be great again. I want America to be actually have morals. I don't want us to turn out like Canada, where they're now talking about doing MAID on babies, which is the unaliving. Yeah, exactly. Lord of mercy. I do not want America to become like this. The only way that we do this, the only way that we can make America holy, is by preaching the actual gospel to the American people, which is theosis, which is the Orthodox Church, which is through the sacraments, which is through embracing and participating in God's divine energies. I mean, this is the actual gospel, not this nominalist nonsense slop that people have pushed on you. This big, great psyop that Protestantism has promised us, where people are out there delusional, thinking they're good to go, and they're living a life completely replete with sin, and they have no sacraments at all, right? So, I mean, we've seen what Protestantism does to the country. It got us in the situation that we're in now. The only way out is Orthodoxy, and real Orthodoxy, where we call out the issues, like what's going on with the EP and Ukraine, like we're doing right now. So this is super, super important.
And you're completely right, Ben. And at the end of the day, the idea that, oh, well, we're here in America, so that doesn't affect us. It affects us more. Where do you think the money that these things come from? Like, why do you think the EP even wanted control over the Greek churches in America? It's for the remittances. It's for the money. So if us in America are the least informed, then we're just getting the money taken out of our back pocket without, like, there is power here. Like, you can talk to your bishop, you can talk to your priest, parish councils, these sorts of things. And again, like you said, Ben, people accuse me because I go to these places and I'm ostensibly, again, because of these church phenomenons, I'm relieved, for example, when Russia gains territory in Ukraine, because every church that gets behind the front line isn't subject to this anymore, which I think every Orthodox Christian should feel to some degree. But because I have these perspectives, people are like, oh, you must hate America. You're a Russia shill. When are you moving to Russia? And you have to recognize there's a big difference between the American nation, the people, and the United States empire, the global American empire. Like, right. As somebody who wants nothing more than the best interest for the American nation, the American people, who are, one, being demographically replaced here at home, and two, are having their goodwill exploited worldwide to persecute Christians. Both of those things are terrible. And who's doing that to us? It's not Russia, it's not China, it's not our historical civilizational enemies. It's, unfortunately, the call is coming from inside the house. It's the parasite class of people that have risen to power in America and are using our international massive navy as a cudgel, and are opening our borders to replace the people here. And as somebody who fundamentally thinks that empire is opposed to the American nation, seeing that empire not win in places like Ukraine or in places like the Middle East at the behest of Israel, ironically enough, people might not want to say this because they're subject to propaganda. I think that is pro-American, because America, to me, isn't people in the White House or the Capitol. It's you and me, Ben. It's people whose ancestors go back hundreds of years. And right. If those people were Christian, and if those people wanted to follow God as best as possible, and how they did it has led to this, then being Orthodox is also the most pro-American thing you can do, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think it's super important. I was thinking about this earlier today. I'll say this briefly, and then we'll get back into the news. One of the most important things to remember as an Orthodox Christian, as we're going through these kind of geopolitical issues that are going on right now, is you can't put your faith in nations, whether it's Russia, whether it's United States, whether it's China, whether it's Finland, whether it's wherever else, Canada, Israel. You cannot put your faith in these nations, right? We are not secular humanists. We are not humanists, right? We are Orthodox Christians. We put our faith in Jesus Christ. Our mission is to bring people to the Orthodox Church so they can receive theosis and salvation. That is our mission. That is what will make the world a better place. Putting all of your eggs in the basket of certain nation states is only going to lead you to disaster, right? We might say maybe these churches would do better if they're behind the Russian lines or whatever the case may be. But just look at Russia only 100 years ago. Was it very good for Orthodox Christians there then? When they're less than 100 years ago, when they're lining up priests, to put them in the ditches. Read the stories of all the new martyrs, right? So who's to say that this, no nation is going to be perfect. There's only one kingdom we should be focusing on. Spreading the kingdom of Jesus Christ, right?
And what did
the Orthodox
Father
faith.
Seraphim and the people that wrote the Catacomb Saints book say? Dedicated to the new martyrs of Russia, today in Russia, tomorrow in America. So it
Right.
could be anywhere.
That's right. All right, let's dive in.
The Moldovan government.
Yeah, so Conrad, I wanted to ask you more about the report you did on religious persecution in the Moldovan community of Grenouții in September. You said you were there personally. Several people I know face charges for defending their church. From your conversations, how do you think locals perceive the state's judicial actions?
It seems like really a classic case of lawfare, and people even in the United States have experienced this from when Biden was president, and during other eras of persecution, of course. But I think again, the majority of the people in these villages, as was shown in the report from WWIII, they were the ones who've built and sustained these parishes over the years. These are the people who actually care about Orthodox Christianity, and the canons of the church say you can't just abandon your canonical bishop and go along with some new thing set up because the government supports it. And these are pious people. These are grandmothers, parents, children that want to worship in the way that their ancestors did, and not, as you mentioned, these LGBT parades. The government supports these things. So why would the government-supported church not be more lenient on these moral issues that these pious people really care about? Again, and when I was there, I met with the priest, who was a humble man. But the unfortunate reality is with the support from the Romanian government, the Moldovan government, the priests of the schismatic body are able to be offered more money and higher salaries than, again, the much more humble priests who are desiring to stay with the canonical Moldovan church. So many priests, they unfortunately fold to this temptation to betray their flock, betray the church, and ultimately become pawns for what is in reality just aspirations to join the EU.
Yeah, and we saw this actually with the Bolsheviks, right? We saw this in the revolution. Priests betraying their own and basically selling them out for the interests of the state. So there's nothing new under the sun. This is the same playbook time and time again, which is truly unfortunate. But this is the reality of what's going on in the world. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a break from this. I want to dive into an article here, because we were talking about some of the criticism from other metropolitans on the actions of Bartholomew. Just so you know, I'm not just speaking out of the wazoo here. This is the reflection of Metropolitan Anthony that talks about the motives of Patriarch Bartholomew's actions in Ukraine. This was from December, so this wasn't that long ago. Only 2 months ago, this was some statements here. So in a recent interview, again, this is the Union of Orthodox Journalists website I'm pulling this from. I'm going to have one of them on the show later this month to break down the Ukraine situation even more. But there was a recent interview in the program Church in the World. Metropolitan Anthony identified what he described as 3 key motives that guided the EP in establishing the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Again, this is the fake schismatic church that has destabilized Ukraine, that has led to Zelensky's guys being able to go in and kidnap people and put them on the front lines and steal their churches and beat old ladies and kick them out, basically, because now they've been able to pass a law stating that the UOC is not an actual church anymore. So they don't have clergy exemptions. They can draft clergymen, right? They could draft these old men and put them on the front lines to be used as fodder, which is what they do. Sometimes without actual ammunition and their weapons. I mean, just sent out there to die, basically. According to Metropolitan Anthony, the first motive was external pressure. Oh, by the way, this is what happened to all of the stupid Western people that signed up as volunteers to go beef cannon fodder in Ukraine. You remember all of that? It was like 2 or 3 years ago. They were pushing this massive campaign to get it's just really dumb young men to go over and fight for Ukraine, fight for Zelensky. They're like, you want to be a mercenary? Go out here. They're sending them out to the front lines with no ammo. They're sending them out there basically to absorb bullets to move their own troops around.
And a big thing that you might not hear elsewhere is that probably the biggest base of people that these mercenaries were recruiting from is, look, obviously the biggest thing that was happening was commanders, actual army officers were having their guys go over there in, unofficial capacity, but they're still effectively acting as military operatives. But more than that, a lot of these people were Satanists. A lot of these people were, again, these sort of esoteric Nazi right-wing kind of guys that have been fighting in the Ukraine since 2014, these militias that are extremely anti-Russian and Satanist. And I interviewed refugees from Chasov Yar, who just a few days before had been pulled out of the gray zone in the middle of fighting. They were some of the last people in that village hiding in their basement underground. And they said years before, when the Ukrainians first came to their village, one of the first things they did was go into their church, spray the iconostasis with machine gun fire, desecrate relics, all of these sorts of things. And again, some of these people are volunteers from the West that want to be able to get away with these kinds of horrendous war crimes, then go over there to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a lot of the guys from the Azov battalion, there's a famous picture of one of their dudes with his shirt off with a big Baphomet tattoo on his chest. I mean, you're absolutely right. They're quote unquote conservatives over there in Ukraine are completely subverted. They're psyoped, right? How can you be both like a Wignat and also a Satanist? It doesn't make any sense. But that's just the level of subversion that has happened there. Through these CIA programs. I mean, it's absolutely insane. But let's read the criticism of the EP's motivations here again. This is from the Union of Orthodox Journalists. If you want, go ahead and subscribe to them on X and check out their news articles, because they put out high quality stuff on this particular crisis almost every single day. So let's check this out. According to Metropolitan Anthony, the first motive of the EP to establish the schismatic church as official, basically granting them a tomos of autocephaly, the first motive was external pressure. He said Patriarch Bartholomew was under strong influence from certain handlers. Whoa, who could that be? Adding that connections between the Fanar and U.S. intelligence services date back to the time of Patriarch Athenagoras. Whoa, Cleve wasn't just making this stuff up. Right? Who was brought to Istanbul on President Truman's plane? They were just talking about that. The second motive, he said, was personal resentment following the absence of several local churches, including the Russian Orthodox Church, from the Crete Council organized by Patriarch Bartholomew, which was a complete failure, by the way. The Crete Council, multiple different jurisdictions did not show up. So he was resentful about that. He wanted to take it out on the ROC. Patriarch Bartholomew, this is no secret, was driven by a completely unchristian feeling, such as revenge, which he has stated many times, Metropolitan Anthony said. He noted unresolved issues between the patriarchs of Antioch and Jerusalem and other factors have led some churches to stay away. From basically this Crete Council here. There's too much drama. It's a massive drama alert going on. The Russian church was the last of them. Nevertheless, for some reason, Patriarch Bartholomew decided it was the MP that tried to derail the council. And already then, when this happened, he used the word revenge, speaking about what his reaction would be to the fact that a council that still took place ended up not being pan-Orthodox. It was a failure. Therefore, his personal grievance became another significant factor that led him to such an intrusion into Ukraine and interference in its church affairs. That's to put it mildly. Interference in his church affairs. This is from Metropolitan Anthony. The third motive Metropolitan Anthony asserted was papist ambitions. You see all these ecumenical dialogues going on between the EP and the Vatican. Well, what's all that about? Well, guess what? They both have the same handlers. They both have CIA connections, right? They both have this kind of ecumenist bent, which is just is a synonym basically for Freemasonry. Now, you might not say that it's necessarily the institution of the Freemasons that have subverted, but certainly the ideology, religious indifferentism, liberal axioms, and Enlightenment principles. This is what we see pervading through any ecumenical type meeting. We see this all the time. We just talked about this with Anthony Westgate on the show. But anyway, papist ambitions. he said the patriarch began to consider himself a kind of pope in the Orthodox world. We see statements by Elpidophoros parroting this as well, calling the Ecumenical Patriarch first without equals. That was a very famous statement this last year he put out, saying the EP was first without equals, which is not true, But you see the company men repeating this time and time again, people like Ethan Wayne, so on and so forth, all over X, pushing this kind of, Fanar first narrative as if he is some kind of Orthodox pope, which is absolutely not true.
According to Ethan Wayne, I'm an evil, evil man. So,
well, Ethan Wayne is going to be the next Orthodox pope. You're going to see this.
Yeah, Ethan Wayne is going to be, he's going to be the next ecumenical patriarch.
Lord have mercy on us if that was the case.
I can't see him finding a wife, so he could be eligible. So I mean, I'm just saying. Like,
I don't want to be that mean to the guy. Lord have mercy on Ethan Wayne. This Lent.
I hope you find a loving wife, Ethan.
Yes.
Truly.
this Lent, my penance will be praying for Ethan Wayne daily.
Yes.
All right, let's see. So anyway, papist ambitions. He began to consider himself a kind of pope of the Orthodox world, appropriating to himself certain imaginary privileges. And considering himself such an absolute autocrat of the Orthodox world, he believes he can do whatever he wants, annul decisions centuries old, grant someone autocephaly or revoke autocephaly, which is completely new to do that without any kind of external approval or people that aren't even under your own jurisdiction, dude. Just randomly, anybody in the world can grant autocephaly in other people's jurisdictions, which is exactly what he's doing. He's granting this in other people's jurisdictions. Okay, completely non-canonical. This is an uncanonical practice. This has never happened with the Ecumenical Patriarch. Even the Bishop of Rome in the first 1,000 years of the church, do you know what the document stated? Said he does not have the ability to exercise canonical jurisdiction in the East. Even the Bishop of Rome, when we were adhering to papal primacy. So
keep going, Ben. Let me find I'm gonna grab a book that I want to recommend for people if they want to dig into the canons about this stuff. So keep going. I'll be right back.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, believes he can do whatever he wants. An old decision, centuries old, grant someone autocephaly, revoke autocephaly, call deposed former clergy or laymen who were never lawfully ordained bishops and priests. So he's talking about making schismatics bishops and priests in other people's jurisdictions without the approval of the people who are in those jurisdictions, right? This, without a doubt, leads to chaos in the Orthodox world and a sharp rejection of the Patriarch is doing, the EP.
For anybody that
Anthony, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say for anybody that wants to go deeper on the actual reason why everything Ben is saying is completely true and that the EP can't be doing this, I recommend this book, The Ecclesial Crisis in Ukraine and Its Solution According to the Sacred Canons. It's by Metropolitan Nikephoros of Kikos in Cyprus, so ostensibly a church whose archbishop has recognized the schismatics. So he's from the Greek world, so this isn't some Russian propaganda or something like that. This is an esteemed Cypriot bishop. And the case of Cyprus is interesting enough. Cyprus, of course, is an autocephalous church within Orthodoxy that was granted its autocephaly by who? The EP? No. By the Pope? No. By the Second Ecumenical Council. That's right. It was the Second Ecumenical Council that gave the Church of Cyprus its autocephaly from the Church of Antioch. So that's another just fantastic example of why both papal ecclesiology of Vatican I and this neo-papist ecclesiology of Bartholomew and the modern EP is both completely incorrect. But yeah, I highly recommend this book. It's from Holy Trinity Press from Jordanville. So get this one. It's really fascinating stuff. I remember even though you don't want to read this kind of stuff right when you're new into the church, this actually did help me really understand how the Orthodox Church physically operates as a newcomer in midst of this crisis.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm kind of already cooked because before I was even inquiring into Orthodoxy, I'd read the Rudder, So it's I don't know. That's just kind of the nature of things. But I was also engaging in debates and dialogues and things like this, so it's a little bit different. E-War Mapping has a good comment here. Seems like Patriarch Bartholomew's actions are a lot like Rome's leading up to the Great Schism, growing claims of universal power. That is an excellent observation. Absolutely. This is dangerous territory. So everybody that is watching in the audience, I see a lot of people saying they're frustrated, they're upset, they would like to do something. Well, you know what you can do? This Lent season, every single person in this audience should pray for the patriarch. Pray for Patriarch Bartholomew. Pray for his heart to be softened. Pray for him to realize the Tomos granted in Ukraine was a mistake and to reconcile with his brothers. Because what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the exact opposite. We're seeing the hardening of his heart. We're seeing the hardening of his followers' hearts, El Pitaforo, so on and so forth. They're saying that the people under the MP are just nationalists and they have a false church and they're just propagandists and they're not actually Orthodox. These are the exact words of El Pitaforos, who is the next in line to be the EP, according to many insiders.
We got to pray that doesn't happen.
Yeah, pray against that, but also pray for the patriarch. You know, it's got to be difficult praying for, you know, somebody who you might be frustrated with, but this is what we're called to do as Orthodox Christians. So that would be my ask of everyone in the audience, you know, who's frustrated. But let's dive into some super chats here, and then we'll dive back into the news here. Joshua Tree became a member. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I try to put out new members content weekly. I just put one out this week talking about how news coverage on this show actually helped the Roman Catholic Church in Argentina. Some of the news coverage that we put out actually ended up resulting in canonical disciplinary action for some of the abuses going on over there. So glory be to God. E-War Mapping, $5. Yo, awesome that Conrad's on. Sure, you'll cover it, but what is the prophetic timeline of the future of the Ukraine war? Maybe that would be a good pivot. We could dive into some prophecy stuff after I get done with the super chat reads, because that is super interesting, dude. Oh yeah, I was talking about getting new soundboard stuff for the super chats. So let's try this new soundboard stuff. I grabbed a couple more sound bites here. I got a Steven Anderson vitamin K soundbite to play.
Vitamin K. I said it's found in yogurt and alfalfa sprouts. Vitamin K.
There you go.
I missed that in my King James. I don't know. I didn't find that one in there.
Cool dude, $5. Can your guest explain the gnome thing? Gnomes are pretty cool and real.
Gnomes are real. I need to find my. Give me one sec.
You're a gnome truther. You're a real gnome truther. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. I'll give you the 66 book King James Bible sound clip here.
I can't find my gnome hat, but it's around.
That right there, hallelujah.
There you go. I grabbed a bunch of clips from that Baptist guy we were watching last night. That guy's hilarious, man. That dude was making me literally cry. It was so funny. $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Cleve, and thank you for covering this heartbreaking story. Also follow your videos on Catholic news. Conrad, your opinion on Patriarch Bartholomew bending and breaking knives. Bad omen?
There are some things, you know, Patriarch Bartholomew, look, there's a lot of prophecies even about him. You know, some say that his wrongs will be redeemed by a martyrdom at the hand of the Turks. I don't want that to happen. That sounds awful. You know, that happened to St. Gregory V in the 1800s, and it was terrible. But there's a lot of things that talk about this. There's other prophecies, of course. If we have the time to get into it, I'm always ready to talk about St. John Vatatzis, the Marble Emperor, who, you know, some claim that his sword is already out of his sheath and that he's awake and walking around. For people that don't know what I'm talking about, that probably sounds schizophrenic, but some have even reported that he appeared as a beggar to Patriarch Bartholomew, and Patriarch Bartholomew turned him away, and that was another bad omen. So I don't know the specific details about the bending and breaking of the knives on the Vasilopita, but I think actually I might have heard about that. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And unfortunately, I've got some interesting things to say about how the Ukraine schism goes according to some saints. So get ready.
Somebody commented, I guess some people were talking about I guess they're talking smack about the church or something. 700 Club YouTube live section, third video down 2 days ago. They talk about the church. What's the context of that? Because I don't want to watch the whole video, but at what point? Because that is a 50-minute video. You're gonna have to give me a timestamp.
Yeah, I got to send a timestamp. Send me
a timestamp. And I'll check it out. Maybe we can play that and we can break down what they're talking about there. $5 from Uncaged. God bless y'all and all in chat. Thank you so much for the super chat, helping me get closer to the goal. Yarn Chicken for the goal. That's right. We're getting closer here. I don't know what I'm at right now, but we're getting closer. So if you want to support the show, consider sending in a super chat. 9:24. Oh, is that the timestamp for the? Okay, I see that. That's the timestamp for this thing. Is the video there? Is that the? I'm just gonna share my screen so y'all can tell me which one it is. Is it this one? The Iranians pleading U.S. for intervention. Is that it? Is that the video?
Are we about to be assaulted by Protestant nonsense?
Yeah. Is that the right video in him? Let me know. You said 9:24. Okay, yes, he says. All right, let's take a look. I'm not gonna play.
Glad to see the World War Now Patriots showing up in the super chats. Some familiar faces.
Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all showing out for the live stream here. We're in the triple digits of viewers. Praise God. Continue to like and share the stream so we can get some more people in the lobby here. Let's see what they have to say. This guy looks like he's a wealth of knowledge. So we're gonna sit back and learn when a black
they're right when they're spelling it with the Y. That's they really know what they're talking about.
That's true. Yeah, you gotta when you're talking about it, you gotta use like the you gotta get a little
Peeve.
This month marks 4 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Casualties are on track to exceed 2 million this year, 2/3 of them from Russia. Kyiv's fight isn't limited to the battlefield. Moscow's ties to a branch of the Orthodox Church are spurring Ukraine's government to sever that connection. CBN's Caitlin Burke sat down with a Ukrainian official who explained the move.
Ukrainian official
with a Ukrainian official to explain the move. Yeah, you mean they're propagandists?
The government. Some claim the government's persecuting the church. We asked the government; they denied it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. We investigated ourselves. We found ourselves.
say this move isn't about closing churches. It's about clearly separating from Moscow.
The activity of Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate is not prohibited in Ukraine. Ukrainian government asked Ukrainian Orthodox Church to withdraw itself from Russian Orthodox Church.
Schism.
That's it.
In 2024, Ukraine banned the Russian Orthodox Church within its borders, citing its open support for the invasion. Authorities also launched an investigation into the Ukrainian Orthodox Church over its historic ties to Moscow, although it has declared itself independent from the Russian Church. Critics argue the move threatens religious freedom. But Viktor Yelensky, who oversees religious affairs for the government, says worship has continued without restriction.
This law on protection of constitutional order in the sphere of activity of religious organization addressed not to ordinary people, but for structures of Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine.
President Volodymyr Zelensky told those attending the Ukrainian prayer breakfast in D.C. he sees the war itself as a battle not only for territory, but for freedom of faith.
This is an alliance in defense, but also an alliance in faith, in the belief that life must win, that light must prevail.
Ukrainian officials say faith has been central to the nation's resilience. In one poll where Ukrainians were asked what they expect most from religious communities, the top answer was simple: spiritual support. Mr. Yelensky says the church has provided that and more. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
So they're saying we're not actually persecuting the church. We just kind of asked them nicely, hey, you guys got to do a little schism. No big deal. Just do a little schism and we'll stop killing you guys. Okay.
Yeah. At the end of the day, these people just don't know how Orthodoxy or the church works. That's really just like the long and short of it. They're like, oh, you're autonomous, but you have to declare autocephaly. It's like, first of all, you didn't know what that word meant till you looked it up to accuse them of this. Second of all, that's not how it works. You can't just declare autocephaly. That's Protestantism.
Right.
So,
yeah. You guys just have to commit schism and then we'll stop attacking you. Yeah, we're not actually attacking the churches or anything like that. It's such a lie. I mean, here's another video of the OCU and the Zelensky government tear gassing a UOC church and forcing the parishioners out to capture it. And you're never going to see this reported in the Western media. You're never going to see it talked about. They're going to cover it up. The guys at CBN receive government money to report their PSYOP narratives. Basically, it's a big Zionist operation there to get you to support Israel. They'll shill for you to send Israel money to bulldoze Christian homes in Palestine, kick them out, so on and so forth. This is done time and time and time again. You give your money to CBN, you're a complete idiot. I mean, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. You have to be informed about this type of stuff. Nobody is going to hold your hand and walk through it. You have to find this stuff out. Now, again, channels like mine, channels like World War Now, we're reporting on this stuff. So you have to stay UOJ, go and follow their reporting. They're going to give you the stuff that Western mainstream media is not going to report on. They will never show you this image. They will never show you the American-backed Zelensky government persecuting Christians in Ukraine, literally tear gassing them in their place of worship. Imagine you take your freaking kids, your wife, your kids to the divine liturgy on Sunday, and this is what you're greeted with by the government.
These are like historical places. Like that's like permanent damage to like probably centuries old priceless art.
Right. Yeah. Well, when they actually get control of these places, they end up taking the icons down. Did you see that? There was a church, the OCU took over, where they're literally taking down the icons of the Holy Russian family. I mean, it's crazy, dude.
Yeah, I went to, they hate the royal martyrs. They hate any saints that are viewed as Russian, which is most of the saints that come from Ukraine. So it's ridiculous. But they also, for example, you'll see how they. I totally lost my train of thought. What was I about to say there? They, yes, the relics, the Kiev Pechersk Lavra, the Kiev Caves Lavra, the most famous Lavra in Ukraine. They took the relics out, just some place they were just lying around everywhere, and they were taking them for indexing and genetic testing and all this stuff that has nothing to do with Orthodoxy or how we treat our relics of our saints and whatnot. But that desecration of that lavra was prophesied by Elder Zosima of Donbas, who proposed in 2002. And I did send you one video, Ben. At some point, you don't need to play the whole thing. It's more just like a music little edit. But at some point in that video, there's a scene where someone is kneeling in front of in a chapel in front of a grave, and that was very close to the front lines in Ukraine, in Russia, Ukraine, and that was where Elder Zosima is buried, at a monastery there that has been completely shelled out. You can see the huge icons at the gate of the monastery have been shot by Ukrainians. And Elder Zosima, who died in 2002, he told his spiritual children at the time to bury him really deep under the ground, so that when the Banderites and the Ukrainians eventually occupy this territory, that they won't be able to dig him up and desecrate his grave. And they were like, what are you talking about? Banderites, Ukrainians, like what? It was like, and so he said all these things in his sermons that they wrote down and have since come true. And I'm going to read some of these here. Again, reposed in 2002. It says here, it is worth noting that the elder who passed away in 2002 said all this during his sermons, taken from audio recordings. This was not done intentionally by him. He simply spoke about it every service, foreseeing the current catastrophe. And he said, there will be a betrayal of the church in the motherland. Indeed, betrayal of everything holy. Such turmoil will begin. It will start in Kiev and spread across our entire land. No one will be spared. There will be such madness all around, but Russia will stand firm. No one will be able to overcome it. There will be great grace there. Remember this: Orthodoxy will be preserved in Russia. Everyone will fall away from the Orthodox faith. It says, in the Kiev Pechersk Lavra will fall. All the grace of the Kiev Pechersk Lavra will transfer to the Optina monastery. I will not live to see this, but you will witness it all. And again, like he said, all these other sorts of things. It says, another keeper of Elder Zosima's knowledge, Father Theophan, now serves under Schelling and Donetsk. He says, I'm simply a bearer of information that may be useful to other people. That's why I'm here. And in fact, that's the very reason I'm speaking with you now. The year 2014 was terrible, and what's coming will be even more terrible, said Elder Zosima. And again, this gets us into World War III and the other things that I talk about on my show about Russia and Turkey and the other sorts of things. But it's crazy that this holy man who started, this is from the Eschatological Visions of the Blessed, by the way, by my friend. It's a bunch of writings of saints compiled, talking about these sorts of things: Third World War, schism, end times, all that kind of stuff. And we've had Jonathan on our show. It's a really great resource. But Elder Zosima and many of these saints, with the fact that they were able to talk about this, it's very normal for the people in Ukraine. Like they're used to this war now at this point, and they're used to these elders. And Elder Zosima set up. I went to two of the monasteries that he established that are very much destroyed. If you play the video, you don't even have to play it with sound if you don't want to, Ben. There's some footage from the bombed out monasteries and churches that I went to. And again, I have all sorts of critiques of the Russian government. You can listen to some of Dmitry and I's streams about that, speculate how some of the earliest Donbas patriots that broke away from Ukraine and fought Givi, Motorola, Moskovoy, some of these people, unfortunately, they were taken out under suspicious circumstances, not exactly 100% by the Ukrainians, if you get what I'm picking up there with internal political disputes. So I have all sorts of criticisms of Russia. But that being said, I have a video that I'm eventually going to need to release. There's a clip from it in that edit that I sent where I was touring a church that at one point was the front line. There was Ukrainian troops on one side and Russian troops on the other side. Now the Russians had pushed them back, but just a few months ago, it had been like the church was the gray zone. And you can see just an objective reality. Who cares more about not destroying these temples? Who cares more about, in theory, when they rule over these churches, wanting these churches to still exist? And I walk in and you can see on the Ukrainian side, there's just thick shells all through the church everywhere. And on the Russian side, sure, there were some shellings, but you can tell there was some kind of effort to avoid just destroying this building. And I saw that all over the place. I heard that from the people that I spoke to. There's even, again, I'm going to edit it's my fourth video that I still need to release from my footage from the Donbas, where I go to St. Nicholas Monastery, where Elder Zosima is buried. And it's a big monastery complex. So there's a lot of different chapels and different churches. And every single dome or cross is either destroyed or got a strike attempted to hit it, where at one point the Ukrainians, and this was, I believe they even knew it was a satanic anti-Christian battalion, they explicitly shot their mortars at every single individual cross in the monastery complex. The dome itself, it survived, but there's a huge hole in the golden dome at the top of the church. One of the chapels has the cross just like hanging by a thread because it got hit, but it's still standing strong. There's all sorts of examples of this. They shot a tank shell through the front of the church that miraculously was protected from the iconostasis. It just disappeared, so the iconostasis is still completely preserved. So I saw all sorts of these incredible things. And Elder Zosima even told the monks and nuns of this monastery complex to build an underground chapel, because he told them they would be worshiping there for many, many years. So they all live and they worship in this underground church where there's no electricity. It's in the dark. I went down there as well, and it was truly a humbling experience to sort of feel like what it must have felt like to be a catacomb Christian at some point. And for
Somebody
the book,
said, what's the book you're referencing?
It's The Eschatological Visions of the Blessed by Eschaton Vigil. You can go to eschatonvigil.org and find the book.
There you go. All right, let's take a look at this edit you're talking about. I'm going to mute it though, so I don't get copyright striked. But we'll take a look at it.
There's one of the monastery churches. There's Ben. That's the church that I was talking about, where it was on either side.
Mm-hmm.
That was a member of the St. Alexander Nevsky Volunteer Brigade. I have that patch right here. I showed the radio there, the walkie-talkie, because it when it says FPV, when that other shot where it was red, we have this system with us that alerts us whenever there's a drone within a certain radius nearby. And it happened a lot, and several times we saw like drones. When I saw a drone get intercepted by any aircraft activity overhead, we saw a drone going over the monastery. And if you go to that one part of the video where there's the really bombed out church, I was at a service there, and you saw the guys carrying that icon, that big icon, all of those priests. That was that church at the very beginning there. And then that right there, that's Elder. Go back to that part. That's Elder. There was the part where the guy was going and kneeling. That was Elder Zosima's grave, who predicted those things that I had talked about before. And there's an icon of, that right there. You can see that picture on the left over his shoulder. That's Elder Zosima of Donbas, who made that prediction, and that's where he's buried, and we were able to venerate at his grave. And you can see even on the inside, someone went in there and messed with it a little bit. But they were at that same place. We were at the other monastery with the other bombed out church building that was a little bit closer to Donbas, where they had the icon that they were hauling in. In 2014, that's a famous icon that Elder Zosima had commissioned on Mount Athos, based on the Iveron icon of Mount Athos. And it was a very well-known icon. So in 2014, when Donetsk was getting shelled, they pulled that icon out behind the front line so it wouldn't get destroyed. And I was there 2025, so 11 years later, it was finally being returned to the monastery. And those nuns at that monastery and the priests never stopped doing services, even when there were troops of either side on the grounds shooting at them. They've had their roof caved in. They've got a plywood roof in there. And we went to this service to commemorate the return of the icon to the place. And it was like 5-6 hour service, 3 bishops, 40 priests. It was amazing. But then the crazy thing that happened was about 5 hours into the service, a Ukrainian missile hit a cemetery about 500 meters away and shook the whole building. And I talked to the people afterwards, and they did the only thing the only military target they really could have been going for was to kill the Metropolitan himself, because Metropolitan Vladimir of Donetsk was there. And he's obviously a very patriotic figure. He's been highlighting the war crimes and the stuff that they have done. So he's someone that they would really want to take out. And interesting, he's like 6'11", 7 feet tall. That surprised me when I saw him in person. Very, very tall bishop. But he was did I lose anybody? Hello.
No, I'm here.
No,
I get it.
okay. You're just staying very still, but it was a crazy experience, and I was scared when the missile hit and shook everything. But the Metropolitan, who was at the altar, he had his hands up and he was just chanting. He briefly paused, no movement at all, and then just went right back to it. No fear. No, it's just that's what it's like there, I guess. So it was crazy.
Yeah, it looks like a nightmare, dude. All the drone warfare footage and all that kind of stuff is just like, I don't know. If that came to the United States, it would just be a complete and total mess. I couldn't imagine having to live through that entire nonsense. I mean, it's just it's a horror show, dude.
Someone's asking about the Satanic Battalion. I can't remember if they had identified this name specifically, but there's all sorts of groups: Kraken, Tornado, all these sorts of different groups under Azov and under different Ukrainian nationalist groups that, again, people forget that the war had been going on for years before 2022, and the people of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, before the Russian army came in, they were almost on their own. Sure, there was some, covert Russian assistance, but people say, like, what are your criticisms of Russia in all of this? If I'm being perfectly honest, my criticism is that they didn't go in sooner, because I've actually covered this, because I've been covering the Russia-Ukraine war since 2019 on my old newsletter, The American Byzantine. It's been a kind of a passion project of mine, but realizing that the killings that have happened, the crucifixions in Odessa, the burning of the buildings, the just atrocities that these people endured for the 8 years when they were their own independent countries, not recognized by anybody. So many horrible things. I mean, there had to be people's tribunals the law and order was starting to break down. People had to go in and hold like tribunals against like child abusers, and like it was crazy that they had to do these kinds of things to maintain law and order. But ultimately, more and more people are turning to Christ in these areas. And even on the Russian front line, in the Russian military, I've heard reports over 50,000 baptisms on the front line of people in the military, a lot of them prisoners, people that come from non-Christian parts of the Russian Federation, and just people that still during the Soviet Union never had their family baptize them or bring them into the faith. So very interesting things. And again, I showed you the St. Alexander Nevsky Volunteer Brigade patch. I also have a patch from the Tsar St. Nicholas II Rocket Brigade right here, which is I thought was very cool. And someone even gave me this version of it that's mounted, and it says, Russians people unite, I'm counting on you, which is a quote from Tsar St. Nicholas II. And so there are a lot of, again, in they say there's no atheists in foxholes, but you can definitely palpably feel the sort of, how people are, the presence of death, these places where they've been under a war zone for a long time. It's a real memento mori all the time. And people, I think, have a lot easier time focusing on what matters.
Right. Jonathan sends in $10. Sending in that government money. Appreciate the support, man. Thank you for supporting the stream. Again, this is not something that people typically talk about. I mean, even on YouTube, sometimes people will talk about this kind of stuff and get their channels taken down. So, certainly send in the support. We definitely appreciate it. And support Conrad's show as well. Marilyn, $5. Please forgive me and let me come back. I'll be so good. Well, I'll unban your other account, but don't act the fool in the chat, please. All right, so she's spamming some crazy stuff last time. All right, let's take a look at this. I want to play this video too, just so you get an idea, because this isn't just like empty churches. This is during divine liturgy. They're storming in and taking over these places. So again, you can see Ukrainian flag, during the divine liturgy, and they're basically taking over this church. They're doing all sorts of nonsense while the service is going on. You see this is going on. I want to get the screen taken down because I don't know if that's some kind of pre-recorded music, because it'll copyright strike me. But yeah, they're walking in, they're doing demonstrations as the service is going on. Usually these are like the earlier parts of the harassment campaigns. They'll come in, they'll make their threats, they'll wave the flags, and then later they'll come in and they'll actually kick everybody out. So this happens time and time again. It's very unfortunate. I would play that one video because there was a bishop that had been attacked. This is another angle from that one video that we had played that shows the aftermath of them breaking in and actually attacking the church members. So you can see here. See, they're trying to keep the Ukrainian troops out because they're attacking them and trying to take their church. But they're wanting to come in. It's just elderly people, that are just trying to defend their home. Absolutely insane. They're pepper spraying these people, in some cases tear gassing them, in some cases attacking the bishops.
You talk to Protestants and some of these people. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, you talk to Protestants and Catholics and these people, and they're like, why don't they just break away from Russia? Why is all of this worth it? And it's like, you don't understand ecclesiology. I mean, you read the scriptures, you read, like, the priests, every Orthodox priest you go to is celebrating the liturgy on behalf of the bishop. The bishop and his apostolic succession are what the church is fundamentally anchored in. And telling people that they can just move bishops or go, look, it's not because of the people in Moldova necessarily love Russia so much, but I was told this by people there. They said, we go into a church, and if we hear them commemorating Patriarch Kirill and Metropolitan Vladimir, that's how we know it's the correct church, not because they think Patriarch Kirill is some hero or anything, but because he's the canonical bishop that is over them, and they know that if the church hasn't broken away from that, that's canonical. You can do the same thing in America. If you walk into a church in America, if you go to a church in America and you listen for the bishops, you'll be able to tell who's a canonical, which church is canonical and which one isn't. That's sort of the whole key. And again, that's people in the modern world just don't care about this stuff.
Right. This was what I was talking about earlier with the fresco being taken down. So this is in Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities and representatives of state-backed OCU, this is a schismatic church, have agreed to remove the fresco depicting the royal martyrs from the Holy Dormition Cathedral. So this is what happens. They get access to these churches, they take over the churches, and they just start desecrating them left and right. There are reports, as I said earlier, of members of the OCU defecating on the altar. They were doing raves inside of the churches that they've taken over. They're putting on satanic plays. So they're just desecrating the icons, cutting them apart and destroying the place. I mean, it's a complete mess. They don't want to take over the churches because they think they're, they're actually going to use them for church services and things like this. Nine times out of 10, they're desecrating them. It's a political move. It's absolutely insane. So we're going to move into some of the prophecy stuff here because we've shown enough. Well, maybe not enough. We've shown a few videos of these churches being raided. This is a very common occurrence. This isn't something rare. It happens every single day over there. You can follow the UOJ for daily reports on this stuff. They will announce their intentions to take over these churches ahead of time. So they give them warning. They say, you can get out or we're going to bust in and we're going to occupy your space. It's not through legal means. They're coming in. They're occupying the space with military force, and then they will not allow you back in. They'll change the locks. They'll imprison the clergy. They'll send the clergy to the front lines to die, send them out into the war zone with no ammunition in their guns. It's horrific. This is what's happening to our Christian brothers and sisters, and the West is not reporting on this at all. Got a couple more super chats in. Handsome Cat, $5. What is the logic of Ukrainian Nazis being funded by Israeli billionaires and destroying Orthodox churches? Do they just want to be self-defeating? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Unmute your mic.
Muted. Forgive me. Classic error. The issue is the Ukrainian issues with the billionaires. It's curious, isn't it? Why would Israeli billionaires fund Nazis? But the head of the Azov battalion, we've all seen the videos of them traveling to Israel, singing, doing all the Israeli dances, dancing to Hava Nagila. Literally, that's a video. And these guys, unfortunately, you realize that for example, even Ukrainian Nazism and this veneration of Bandera and everything, it's a very specific brand of anti-Russian, largely, again, anti-Christian. There's a lot of pagan influence here. So there's a few angles to look at it. Obviously, people in Ukraine that want to cleave it away from Russia are going to support these groups. But even more so than that, there's a lot of rumors. We've done shows about this on World War Now and some of our Ether Hour episodes, which people can check out, is the idea of the new heavenly Jerusalem, that a lot of this war, specifically in the region of Donbas, north of the Crimea, that certain powers that be are clearing this area out, having the Christians kill each other, and to have the land empty to make it a second homeland for the Jewish people in the event that Israel comes under threat from its enemies surrounding it. Because for those that don't know, Moldova, the Black Sea coast of Ukraine, this is the most fertile soil in the world, for example. And Dnipro, known as Dnipropetrovsk, one of the cities, larger cities in Ukraine, it's considered a capital of Jewish spirituality. Chabad Lubavitch, which is Jared Kushner's brand of Judaism, comes from this part of the world. And the largest Jewish center in Europe, the Menorah Center, exists in Dnipropetrovsk. And if you look at maps that some of these people have of New Heavenly Jerusalem, Dnipro is New Jerusalem, and it would be sort of they would attempt to build some kind of third temple there. So very interesting ideas all around. If people want to look more into that, you can listen to Dimitri and I's episode on it. We talk about Igor Birkut, a lot of these interesting figures that have gone there and done weird rituals on some of these sites to lay the groundwork for this stuff. So interesting stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. I'm going to give you this soundboard clip here.
It's going to send you straight to hell. Amen.
Just clipped a whole bunch from that Baptist guy. That's so funny, dude. That guy is the funniest guy on YouTube. Jonathan Kelly, $10. How easy was traveling through border control at USA and Russia, given the nature of your travels and reporting?
So far, I have not been harassed too much. It generally helps. Most of my visas have been religious based because I've been invited by the church. So I think they're a little bit reticent to give me some issues. But I've said this before, I think I've benefited from the fact that I have to fly. There's no direct flights from Russia. So every time I'm flying back, I'm flying through Turkey. So it might give people a little bit less pause than if I was flying direct. But obviously they can see. And I'm obviously prepared to talk to anybody. But I've been very open about my activities. There's almost nothing I haven't shared on the show, let alone something I wouldn't be able to share to some kind of American official or whatnot, because I have not broken the law in any way.
Right. Yeah, that definitely helps you document the entire trip, basically.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? It's like, sure, I mean, they can accuse me of doing anything, right? But like, I have nothing to hide.
Right, absolutely. Here, I'll give you this soundboard thing here.
The 66th book, King James Bible, amen.
Amen.
Right there, hallelujah.
I should clip that last part and make that its own soundboard button. All right, let's dive into the prophecies. So you sent me something. Let me go ahead and pull this up.
Yeah, that video is it's a good video because it has it gets very specific about stuff that if in the region that we're talking about right now. And for those that don't know about the prophecies, it's hard to say because there's a lot of prophecies about a lot of different things, right? But we're not exactly talking about the end times. I don't make my show necessarily all about the end times. This is about what I believe is the prophesied and already ongoing Third World War, actually. Metropolitan Neophytos, that bearded gentleman you're seeing right there, he said, I believe it was in 2022 or 2023 at the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, that at that time we were already in the second year of the Third World War. So if you're going by that timeline, we are several years down the path into this ongoing Third World War. And I agree with Marshall McLuhan, who said that the Third World War is a guerrilla conflict with no delineation, a guerrilla information war, but with no delineation between civilian and military participation, which I think we're very much experiencing right now. But St. Paisios is usually the name that comes to people's minds when they think about the prophecies, of course, because he accurately prophesied COVID and the COVID-19 vaccination, saying that there would be a mark and that it would be a precursor to the mark of the beast, and they would produce a vaccine, and it would be for a manufactured illness, and that it would cause a lot of problems for people to have. So people can read Spiritual Counsels Volume 2, from I forget which monastery, the Soroti monastery, where St. Paisios is buried. The nuns there produced that. He talks all about it in volume 2 of that. Of course, he also predicted a potential third world war, but ultimately leads to a clash between Russia and Turkey, which I believe we are moving towards at this very moment, because Turkey is the true neutral player right now in Ukraine, that once they decide to go one way or the other, it really will tip a lot of the balance of power. Because on the Black Sea, Turkey, despite being a NATO member, they try to very much play both sides. And Erdogan is this very gifted politician. If people want to hear analysis of that, they can tune into my stream with David Erhan all about Turkish politics. But a lot of the prophecies say that when Erdogan falls, Kemalist pro-Westerners will take over, and then very quickly the Russo-Turkish war will begin, which will dramatically escalate the worldwide conflict. And what we're seeing right now, for example, in Iran, between Israel, the Persians, the US now potentially going to war there. I mean, every time I go live this past month, I've been making sure that I'm not, if something happens, I'm covering it live in Israel and Iran, because the last time during the 12-day war, Dimitri and I covered it live, and it was a big deal because in 2025, June of last year, an explicit prophecy about this was fulfilled. People might not know, but Elder Theodore Agiopharagides, he was an elder from Crete. He reposed in 2016, and a few years before that, he told his spiritual children, he said, "My children, you will be drinking your coffee," he said, "on that fateful Friday morning, you will be drinking your coffee and you will see that the Jews have struck the nuclear program of the Persians, of Iran." And what happened in June of 2025? At that fateful Friday morning, Greek time, the Jews and the Americans struck the nuclear facilities of Iran. And they say that soon after that, or around that time, Erdogan will fall. So we're watching this closely, and this will again lead to a precipitation of events where Russia will go to war with Turkey. And again, you don't even have to be analyzing the prophecies to know that if that occurred, that would be a very likely scenario. St. Paisios talked about they will close the Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits, and this will force the Russians' hand. The Turks will take some Greek islands, then they'll be forced to withdraw from Cyprus. There's all sorts of specifics that the saints have gotten into here. But if you watch the video that I showed you, Ben, those are two other saints. One of my favorite saints, Saint Philomenos of Jacob's Well, who, if people don't know him, he was martyred by Zionist settlers in 1979 in the West Bank. If you see that icon right there to the left, he was killed again by Israeli settlers. He was guarding Jacob's Well. That's the same well that the woman at the well, Saint Fotini, in the New Testament encountered Christ, and he was its guardian. And these Israelis, who for years had been threatening him and leaving dead animals at his door, they finally had enough, and they broke in and butchered him and chopped him up with an axe and threw a grenade and tried to burn the monastery down. And he had some amazing prophecies, as did St. Gabriel of Georgia, St. Gabriel Ergabadze, one of the most beloved modern saints. So that's who Metropolitan Neophytos, who I had the privilege of meeting with Father Peter Heers in Cyprus. That's who he's talking about in that video.
Here, so we got some big news here from a chatter here. Incense Addict, my wife delivered our first last night. Glory to God. Let me get W incense in the chat. Spam W incense for
many years.
Little baby Incense Addict. Spam W incense. Let's give him a big congratulations. That's awesome, dude. Praise God, man. Having a bunch of ortho babies. Everybody in the chat. It is your obligation to spam W incense to congratulate our brother on this. So that is awesome. Praise God. W's in the chat for little baby incense born addicted to incense. W ortho babies. That's right. Absolutely. That's awesome. Somebody was asking, is there a video on this topic? Yeah, the one you're watching right now. We're about to dive into it. So let's
and if you want more videos on the topic, it's what my channel is all about.
There you go. Perfect. All right, let's take a look at this. Here, while this plays, I'm gonna step away for just a second.
Και πήγαμε στα Ιεροσόλυμα, εκεί στον Πανάγιον Τάφο, με προσέγγισε ο Αγιοκαφίτης μοναχός Παντελεήμων, όσοι έχετε πάει, είναι ο φύλακας του Παναγίου Τάφου. Και μου είπε, σε παρακαλώ, γράψε δεσπότη μου στο βιβλίο που θα βγάλετε για τον Άγιο Φιλούμενο. Ο Άγιος Φιλούμενος, πώς ξέρετε, είναι Κύπριος από την Ορούντα και εμαρτύρησε στο Φρέα του Ιακώβ το 1979, αρνούμενος να φύγει όταν τον επίεσαν σιωνιστές Εβραίοι να εγκαταλείψει το προσκύνημα εκεί που για 2.000 χρόνια ήταν χριστιανικό. Επαρέμεινε εκεί το προσκύνημα και μία νύχτα προχερή δύο φανατικοί Εβραίοι με πέλεκ τον εσφαγίασαν. Αργότερα το ύψαλον του ευρέθη άφθορων, ευωδιάζων και πολλά θαύματα επιτελών. Εμείς λόγω της σχέσης του τόπου, η ορούντα ανήκει στην Μητρόπολη Μόρφου, πήγαμε με τις μοναχές της Μονής του Αγίου Νικολάου Ορούντας και μαζέψαμε στοιχεία. Ανάμεσα στα όλα αυτά ήταν η Prophecies, το οποίο λέει την κατάληξη όλων αυτών των γεγονότων που ήδη άρχισαν να επιτελούνται. Ακούτε πώς το καταφέρει ο πατήρ Παντελεήμων. Όταν ήμουν ακόμη λαϊκός, αναφέρει, ήρθα ως προσκυνητής στα Ιεροσόλυμα με τον κύριο Δημήτρη Παναγόπουλο, τον γνωστό ιεροκήρυκα. Τις μέρες που ήμασταν εδώ ξεναγώς στο δικό μας λεωφορείο, ήταν πατήρ Φιλούμενος, ο κατοπινός ιερομάρτυρας Φιλούμενος. Τη μέρα λοιπόν που θα εξελιχόμασταν τον πόρο σταγό, μόλις πήραμε τον δρόμο από τον οποίο φαίνεται η ευρύτερη εκεί περιοχή μας είπε: παιδιά μου, θα σας πω κάτι το οποίο εσείς θα ζήσετε, αλλά εγώ δεν θα ζω για να το δω. Μέχρι εδώ, στον κάμπο δηλαδή του Σταγόρ, θα έρθει ο ρωσικός στρατός. Θα κατέβει.
You're muted, brother.
People have been saying this a lot lately. My hair is back. Yeah, I mean, I've actually noticed some of it is growing back, like right around here. I'm getting like the little baby hairs coming back up. I don't know what's
beating
going on.
back the Norwood Reaper. You're fighting him.
That's what it is. It's all of your prayers. All of your prayers are sustaining me. Actually, what it was, it's me reporting on Roman Catholic news. It's cathartic. It's healing my scalp because it's making me, well, it makes me angry, which puts blood flow into my head, which makes my hair grow back. So that's what it is. The more angry I get, the more hair it grows back.
You were already married, Ben, so they're rewarding you with the full head of hair because they know you can't pursue the monastic tonsure. You know, that's the
nice. Orthodoxy grows hair. You know what? There's that Lutheran guy that used to come in the chat all the time, Geralt, and he said Lutheranism would make me not go bald, would make my hair grow back. He's wrong. It's Orthodoxy. That's exactly what it was. By the way, just a reminder, only 5 more super chats till we hit goal. Help me hit the goal on this stream. I really appreciate it. We're going to continue to dive into the prophecies here. So pay close attention.
World War Now Patriots, hit the goal. We can't have our first stream on Ben's channel not hit the goal. We gotta show the respect.
There you go. There you go. Appreciate it. Giving towards hair regrowth miracle. That's right. John Daniels, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it, man. Which soundboard thing do I want to do? There you go.
Vitamin K. I said it's found in yogurt and alfalfa sprouts. Vitamin K.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've seen this video a while ago when this actually, when they were connecting this prophecy to that actually happening, them striking the nuclear program. So I might have seen it from you sharing it, actually. That might have been it.
Και θα κάνει πολλές καταστροφές. Ο σκοπός του θα είναι να φτάσει στα Ιεροσόλυμα, αλλά εδώ θα σταματήσει. Δεν θα επέξει ο Θεός να πάρει παρακάτω. Αυτό πιστεύω ήταν μια αποκάλυψη που έδωσε ο Θεός στον Άγιο εκείνη τη συγκεκριμένη μέρα, μια και ο ίδιος ήταν αυστηρά οδηγόρογος και όταν μιλούσε μόνο για να οδηγήσει τους ανθρώπους στον Χριστό. Αυτά ο Άγιος Φιλούμενος έναν χρόνο πριν των μαρτυριών του 1978. Κάτι άλλο. Δεν ξέρω αν έχετε διαβάσει ένα βιβλίο που δύσκολα κυκλοφορεί, ενός Αγίου της Γεωργίας. Ακούσατε προηγούμενα από τον Κάφκασο. Τότε από εκεί θα ξεκινήσει ο μεγάλος πόλεμος. Είναι ένας σύγχρονος Άγιος της Γεωργίας, ο Όσιος Γαβριήλ, ο διαχριστός Σαλός, ο οποίος εκοιμήθη ένα χρόνο μετά τον κύριο Paisios, το 1995. Διάβασα μια προφητεία που λέει: Αχ, Γεωργία, χώρα μου, θα λιώσει σαν λαμπάδα το κοινό σου, αλλά μετά θα το σαστήσει. Μετά τα δίκαια που θα αποκαλέσουν. Όταν τον ερώτησαν γιατί θα λιώσει η Γεωργία σαν λαμπάδα, από εδώ θα περάσουν τα στρατεύματα των Ρώσων και την Τουρκία. Άρα, περιμένουμε όλοι έναν μεγάλο, τεράστιο ρωσοτουρκικό πόλεμο.
And I was very privileged to meet Metropolitan Theophitos, the bishop, talking in that video when I traveled with Father Peter Hears to Cyprus. And that was in 2024. So again, a lot of these things have changed even since then. So it is wild times that we live in. I do believe that for those that have eyes to see, I know that we don't speculate about the end times. Only the Father will know. But the scriptures also say that there will be those who speak these words, that there will be signs of the times that the faithful will be able to recognize. And I think the growth of Orthodoxy in the West, combined with this impending war with Israel, as well as, I mean, even the Israeli Zionists, Netanyahu himself, they talk about this, and St. Paisios did too. He said 75 to 80 years, the Israeli state will potentially stop existing. And Israel, they're terrified of this 80-year curse, this idea that a Jewish state can't survive longer than 80 years. So we are very much in, I believe, prophetic times.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've read a few of the prophecies from St. Paisios. I'm trying to pull up one now if I can find the actual here you go. I think this is the
For those
text
who
here.
want St. Paisios, the book I showed you, Eschatological Visions, it has a whole chapter about St. Paisios, but they also sell that chapter as its own book. For example, this one is called The Prophecies of St. Paisios, Visions of World War III, from Eschaton Vigil, who I see is in the chat that you have a super chat from. So he's someone you should probably also have on the show, but great guy. And you know, again, there's a few other books, but before he made these books, besides things in Greek and Russian, the only source for a lot of this stuff was like Dimitri and I's show, Father Peter's show, and other stuff. So he's done a great service to people, bringing a lot of these into English for the first time.
Awesome. Praise God. Let me see if I can find this. Well, okay. I'm going to pull up one of the St. Paisios prophecies that was pretty striking to me. This was on our times. This is St. Paisios, one of his prophecies, ties into Zionism, ties into some other things. He goes over just some basic stuff here. I'm not going to read the entire thing. I'll kind of skip around because it's not exactly short. It's not long, but it's not exactly short. You don't want me to sit here and read this entire thing. If you want to, I can, I'll put this in the chat. So if you want to read this your own time, the entire thing, you can check out it at that link there. All right, but anyway, the beginning, spirit of lukewarmness reigns. There's no manliness at all. We've been spoiled for good. How does God still tolerate us? So he's speculating here. Today's generation is a generation of indifference. He's talking about some of the marks of this age here. There are no warriors. The great majority are fit for parades and feasts only. Godlessness and blasphemy are allowed to appear on television. We see that today. And the church is silent and doesn't excommunicate the blasphemers. And they need to be excommunicated. What are they waiting for? Let's not wait for someone else to pull the snake out from its hole so we can live in peace. We continue on. If we don't resist, then our ancestors will arise from their graves. They've suffered so much for the fatherland. And what are we doing for it? If Christians don't begin to witness their faith, there's the first admonition: witness to your faith. Resist evil. How do you resist evil? You call it out like we're doing right now. You don't cover it up like the Roman Catholics do, like the Latins do. You call it out and you root it out. Okay. Then the destroyers will become even more insolent. We see this time and time and time again. In the Roman Catholic Church, when they cover up scandal, you know what ends up happening? You get abuse cases that end up becoming public, and then you have thousands in the same diocese in a 20-year period, which is exactly what happened in California. This is the exact thing that's happened in Spain in the Roman Catholic Church. We cannot stay silent on this type of stuff. Anyway, continue on. Then they'll become even more insolent. But today's Christians are no warriors. If the church keeps silent to avoid conflict with the government, if the metropolitans are silent, if the monks hold their peace, then who will speak up? Okay, we're going to get to some of the predictions here. So he's giving us an admonition to call out the nonsense. Okay, this is an admonition from a saint. Call out the nonsense. Do not be quiet about this. Do not listen to the people who are telling you to shh. Don't talk about this. That's offensive. You can't talk about corruption of the EP. That's offensive. Right? Oh, you're talking about a patriarch. That's offensive. You can't do these types of things. Well, this is an admonition from an actual saint telling us, tell the truth about this. Obviously, we do this with truth and love. But we want to be very clear about the direction of the saints it's telling us to do. Anyway, continue on. If you want to help the church, try to mend your own ways, another admonition, rather than others. And straightening yourself out, you straighten out a particle of the church. So in this great Lent season, Remember what we were saying. Pray for Bartholomew, and pray for yourself as well. If everyone were to do that, then the church would be in perfect order. But today's people attend to everything under the sun, not only to themselves, because it's easy to teach others when mending one's own ways requires effort. If we expose someone out of love with pain in our hearts, then a change will occur in his heart, whether he understands it or not. You see that? Do you see that, everyone? If we expose someone out of love with pain in our hearts, then a change will occur in his heart, whether he understands it or not. But to expose without love, with partiality, only enrages the object of our exposure. Our hostility strikes against his egoism, producing sparks like flint against steel. So when we're doing this, you do it with love. You're not just saying you're an evil person doing ABC 1, 2, 3. You're saying, look, we have to protect our Christian brothers and sisters, so on and so forth. Anyway, let's I want to dive into some of the predictions here. Okay, so we're going to get into some of the predictions that he makes. The world is turned into a madhouse. A great confusion will reign, in which each government will begin to do whatever comes into its head. We'll see how the most unlikely, the most insane events will happen. Okay. The only good thing is these events will happen very quick succession. Ecumenism, common markets, European Union, a one world government, a single made-to-order religion. We see this as the precursors of all of this now, okay? Such is the plan of these devils. The Zionists are already preparing their Messiah. For them, the false Messiah will be king, will rule here on earth. A great discord will arise. In this discord, everyone will clamor for a king to save them. At that moment, they'll offer up their man, who will say, I am the Imam. I am the fifth Buddha. I am the Christ who Christians are awaiting. I am the one who the Jehovah's Witnesses have been waiting for. I am the Jewish Messiah. Very difficult times are ahead for the faithful. Great trials await us. Christians will suffer great persecutions. Meanwhile, the people don't understand that we're on the verge of the end times. The seal of the Antichrist is becoming a reality, as if nothing is happening. That's why Holy Scripture says even the chosen will be deceived. The Zionists want to rule the earth. To achieve their ends, they will use black magic and Satanism. They regard Satan worship as a means to gain strength. They need to carry out their plans. They want to rule the earth using satanic power. God is not something they take into account. One sign that the fulfillment of prophecy is near will be the destruction of the Mosque of Omar in Jerusalem. So mark that there. Destruction of the Mosque of Omar in Jerusalem. They will destroy it in order to restore the Temple of Solomon, which used to be in the same place. In the end, the Jews will pronounce the Antichrist Messiah in this rebuilt temple. The rabbis know the true Messiah has already come and that they crucified him. They know this, yet they are blinded by egoism and fanaticism. Oh, okay. Just making sure I'm actually playing that there. 2,000 years ago, it was written in the book of Revelation that the people will be marked with the number 666. As Holy Scripture says, the ancient Hebrews laid a tax on the peoples they conquered in various wars. The yearly tax was equal to 666 talents of gold. The weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. The weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was six, etc. You get the point. That is the number. That's the number of mammon. Everything is going as planned. They put the number in a long time ago on credit cards. As a result, he who is not marked with this number will be unable to buy, sell, get a loan, find work. Providence tells me the Antichrist would like to subjugate the world using the system. It will be foisted upon people with help of the mechanisms which control the world economy. Only those who receive the mark with this number will be able to take part in economic life. This is why a lot of people are pushing back on digital ID. This is why people are pushing back on, like for instance, in China, you have the digital systems of tracking your reputation. Everything's tied up into one ID. Every single facet of your existence, your internet usage, your driver's licenses, your social security number, your credit card. This is all tied into one ID. Once they actually implement this system in full, you'll be unable to do any kind of commerce without it. You won't be able to do commerce with cash. You won't be able to do any of this. This is why people are pushing back on this. This is what they're ramping up for. Anyway, you get the point. Uh, there's one other part that I wanted to, because he talks about wars here in just a moment. I'm just going to control F wars because this is a big document. Hold on.
Yeah, no, St. Paisios, again, he's given a lot of prophecies. It's the biggest chapter in the eschatological visions book, so that's why they have it as its own separate book here. But again, even many of the spiritual children of St. Paisios, of course, were some of the main people talking about the vaccine. Obviously, Metropolitan Neophytos himself, Elder Gabriel on Mount Athos, Elder of many, Euthemios, and a bunch of other incredible elders that St. Paisios, of course, informed. But the World War III situation, I mean, a lot of the people need to realize that, much like is the Orthodox tradition, he is building on the saints that spoke before him. So it's not that St. Paisios is just pulling all this out of a hat, that he had a vision showing him all of these exact things. A lot of the things he's reiterating were from St. Cosmas of Aetolia and things that he then had revealed to God, clarifying the prophecies of St. Cosmas. One of the things they talk about is this 6-mile nautical mile thing, for example. Like some people have speculated what that might mean, but St. Paisios clarified that it means the nautical mile economic zone between Turkey and Greece from the Aegean islands. So once that goes from 12 miles down to 12 miles off the coast of the Greek islands down to 6 miles, he says that will be a sign of the times that will prefigure this assault on Greece by Turkey and the Russo-Turkish War. And that exact thing has been being debated and gone back and forth in Greece between them and Turkey for the past several years now. So that is very much, we are very much in the era that is being spoken about here.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And they're super granular in these prophecies as well, which is wild when you start to see some of this stuff get fulfilled.
I mean, remember Elder Zosima, he literally said Kiev Pechersk Lavra, that will fall, and that was the main place where they desecrated these relics, and that's where the schismatics are focused now. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it is wild. I mean, there's no questioning that that was a fulfilled prophecy. Jonathan Kelly sends in $5, calling all World War Now patriots. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Esk Vigil, $10. Glory to God. Thank you for supporting the show.
That's the guy that put these together.
Nice. Praise God. Good to see you in the show here. Sigismund, I don't know what currency that is, but this Swedish money, Swedish map ending modders better be staying ahead of the timelines by reading St. Paisios. Yeah, we're going to get into some of his war prophecies here in just a moment, because it's the section that we're on now. John Smooth, take 2 small maple coins from a new catechumen. Lord have mercy for you in Canada. That's got to be tough right now.
It is tough.
By the way, when you see me cross myself, this is the right side here, okay? It's reversed. Some people, I get comments, it drives me nuts, right? Why is he crossing himself like a Latin? I'm like, no, dude, this is my right side, okay? Jonathan Kelly, $10. All this hair talk, both of you need to ortho beard max. That's true. This is true. This is true. That's extremely true. Octavian, $10. W. Conrad, some shekels for vitamin K. Don't tell my rabbi. Oh, we'll keep it secret for you.
Vitamin K. I said it's found in yogurt and alfalfa sprouts. Vitamin K.
Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. With that, we've hit our goal. Let's go. Goal. All right, we're diving right back.
Go.
So this was the part I wanted to get to. Oh, you know what? I need to actually go up a paragraph. Here you go. All right. We're talking about war prophecies here. St. Paisios says, may he who fights in the war for faith and fatherland cross himself and not fear, for God is his helper. God himself will decide whether he is to die or to live. One needs to trust in God, not himself. Providence tells me many events will happen. The Russians will take Turkey. Turkey will disappear from the world map because a third of the Turks will become Christians. Another third will die in the war. Another third will leave for Mesopotamia. So a couple of things here. Russia is going to take Turkey. Turkey is going to disappear from the world map. A third of the Turks will become Christians. Another third is going to die in this war. And another third will leave for Mesopotamia. The Middle East will become a theater of war in which the Russians will take place. Much blood will be spilled. The Chinese, with an army of 200 million, will cross the Euphrates and go all the way to Jerusalem. The sign that this event is approaching will be the destruction of the Mosque of Omar. For its destruction will mark the beginning of the work by the Jews to rebuild the Temple of Solomon, which will be built in the same spot. There will be a great war between the Russians and Europeans, and much blood will be spilled. Greece will not play a leading role in that war, but they will give her Constantinople. So the Russians will give the Greeks Constantinople, not because the Russians adore the Greeks, but because there is no better solution to be found. The city will be handed over before the army has a chance to get there. The Jews, inasmuch as they have great power and the help of the European leadership, will become proud and insolent beyond measure and will conduct themselves shamelessly. They will try to rule Europe. They'll play all sorts of tricks, but the resulting persecutions will lead Christians to unite completely. So this Christian unity, this vain notion of Christian unity through ecumenism, absolutely impossible. The way that we will actually be unified is through suffering, through joint suffering, shared suffering through these wars. However, they won't unite in the way desired by those who are now engaging in various machinations to create a single church under a united single religious leadership. Christians will unite because the unfolding situation will naturally separate the sheep from the goats. Then the prophecy of one flock and one shepherd will actually come to pass. So this is the prophecy of St. Paisios. So a couple of things to note. Key points here. Russians will take Turkey. Turkey's going to disappear. Middle East becomes a theater of war. The Russians are going to take place in this war. Chinese will cross the Euphrates and go all the way to Jerusalem. So the Chinese will march into Jerusalem. Sign of this event approaching will be the destruction of the Mosque of Omar, because they're going to begin rebuilding the Temple of Solomon. There's going to be a huge war between Russians and Europeans. Greece isn't going to play a major part, but they're going to get Constantinople. Remember, Turkey's already relatively dissolved at this point. Russia's not going to figure out a better solution. They're going to give Constantinople to the Greeks. Anyway, the city will be handed over before the army has a chance to get there. The Jews will control Europe pretty much. They'll try to rule Europe. So this is the prophecy here. Now, it's not to say St. Paisios isn't saying, Russians are some kind of saints or something along the lines. He's just laying out exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive war. And through the resulting persecution, then there will be unity. So
no, and I've talked to a lot of Greek people in Greece and Cyprus and in Russia about this, people that knew some of these elders and these saints, and have tried to, piece things together. And people will always say, you skeptics say, they're like, this is just Greek nationalist blunder. Of course, they would say a prophecy about where they get Constantinople back and Turkey gets destroyed because they hate the Turks. But if it really was just nationalist blunder, it would be some heroic story about how Greek F-16 pilots went in and destroyed the Turks. But that's not what happens. The Russians are the ones that ultimately have to do the fighting, which of course makes sense because only the Russian army in the Eurasian continent, I guess besides China or one or two others, is really capable of taking on the Turkish military. But then there's been, speculation. Then why would they give it to the Greeks? Why would they give it back to them? Because I've talked to Russians about this, and they're like, "Well, why would we give it back to them? We almost took Constantinople with the Tsar. Clearly, we are the Christian empire of our day, so we should have it." But I mean, think about all sorts of situations when Constantinople fell. The first time back in, well, not the first time, but when it fell in 1453, most of it was on the European side, on the Thracian side. So you could see a situation where just out of logistical realities, if there's also wars happening out to the east, the Russians give European Constantinople to Greece, and they maintain some kind of presence on the Anatolian, on the Asian side. And ultimately, the other prophecy that this doesn't specifically get into is what's going to happen to the Turks. And it's probably the most dramatic one people to hear because it sounds terrible. And, Lord have mercy that this, maybe there will be a reality where God, people repent and it isn't this bad, because that's true. These prophecies, if anyone doesn't know, these are given for the purpose almost exclusively of repentance. Like, what's the point of talking about these things? It's so that the people of God are brought to repentance. And the saints say that if there is repentance, the consequences of these things can be less severe. But if there isn't repentance, then it gets worse. St. Paisios, St. Cosmas of Aetolia, they talk about how when the war breaks out, and I think what this really means is For example, they say if the war starts in the south, that will be kind of the better scenario where less people will die. Whereas if it starts in the north, that will be the less desirable situation. And I interpret that meaning if this starts between Israel and Iran and the United States, that will be the better scenario. Whereas if this starts between Russia and NATO and Scandinavia or the Baltics, that would be a less positive situation. So hopefully we have all been repenting. But as far as the Turks go, it says 1/3 of the Turks will die, will perish in this war. Another third of them will convert to Orthodoxy, and another third of them will retreat into Central Asia, into the Red Apple, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, these places where the Turkic people actually come from. And a third of them becoming Orthodox, that would make sense considering huge amounts of Turkish people are almost entirely Greek or Armenian in ancestry and were just forcibly culturally converted to Ottomanism and Islam. You can see this in all sorts of DNA tests and people that have talked about this. And even Erdogan, I mean, we talk all about this with David on our show. He's largely of a Georgian subgroup, not exactly a Turk. So again, and when he falls, all of these things are really going to come into place because he's the one holding all of this together. And Kemalists coming to power, the secular nationalists in Turkey that would be much more hostile to Russia, they are poised to come into power right now. They are the most relevant political opposition, and Erdogan does not have an obvious successor. So when he goes or is assassinated or just dies of old age, he's not some young, healthy guy. It's clear that once Israel, and this is part of the reason why Turkey has suddenly decided they want to support the Iranian regime, because they realize that once Israel and the US, if they do succeed in taking out Tehran, taking out the Ayatollah, taking out the Islamic Republic, the next focus is going to be Turkey because they're the most powerful Islamic country with a relevant military that could threaten Israeli dominance of the region. So the Turks know that they're next, and Israel would happily see a Kemalist, pro-Western secular government in Turkey come to power that would focus all its energy on Greece and Russia and not spend as much time with its Islamic brothers and, fighting against Israel and doing all this stuff in Syria. Because if you remember the videos from St. Philomenos and St. Gabriel, a lot of this stuff is going to happen in Syria. And what we're seeing right now, the Turks are winning in Syria. They're driving back the Kurds. The Russians aren't even in Syria anymore, but the Turks, they have a proxy, basically. Al-Jalani al-Shara in Syria is basically just a Turkish proxy. And this is from Metropolitan Iovitos very recently this year. This is from a sermon. He said, this was in August. Well, I am no prophet, but I believe in the people of God who prophesy, and had said long ago, both St. Paisios, who reposed in 1994, and also a fellow villager of mine, a chanter named Dimitris of Protopapas. And I just find that very funny that St. Metropolitan Iovitos is like, yeah, St. Paisios said this, but you know who else said this? This really holy guy in my village. And so it's, saints are everywhere. There really are saints wherever. And he would say, my children, you will become refugees. Many will die in refugeehood. But when you hear, either you or your children, that a new country has been established in Turkey, which will be called Kurdistan, then you will all return back. There will be no war in Cyprus. The war will be happening elsewhere. And for those that don't know, in 1974, the Turks invaded Cyprus, and it's been kind of split down the middle ever since. But according to the prophecies by many Greek saints, they say that once the war starts, the Turks, they're invading other Greek islands. They'll be forced to withdraw from Cyprus, and at that time a Kurdish state will be established. And the Kurds, 40 million strong, dispersed across Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, and they don't have a country. They've been trying to emerge as this Kurdish state for a long time, and the prophecies say, though, once Turkey dissolves, Kurdish state will emerge, Armenia will emerge, Greece will grow, and we'll see what else, of course, happens down below with Israel, who is, prophecies ultimately say, will actually cease to exist at this time. And of course, we know that a lot of this stuff is leading to the third temple and the Antichrist, but I saw some people in the comments asking about St. John Vatatzis, and I want to set the stage for that, which is that for those that aren't aware, in Jewish eschatology, in rabbinic, Jewish, Talmudic sort of understandings of the end times, they have their own Antichrist figure. Obviously, it's not Antichrist because Antichrist is their Messiah, but their kind of version of this anti-messianic figure, anti-Jewish figure of Armilus it's widely interpreted by rabbinical scholars, is a Christian emperor, a final Christian emperor, a Roman emperor that will sort of threaten Jewish hegemony and the rebuilding of the third temple. And for those that don't know, Elder Ephraim, Joseph of Atopedi, many other incredible saints prophesied about St. John Vatatzis, who was a 13th century emperor of Nicaea, which was a Byzantine successor state. He set the stage for the retaking of Constantinople in the 13th century, where they held it for 200 years before it was ultimately taken by the Turks. But like I showed earlier, I have an icon of him here, Jon Vatatzis. This is hand painted from Greece, I got, and if you see this icon, it's noted that he has the sword all the way out of the sheath. And the prophecies, to keep it brief, he is basically sleeping, almost preserved perfectly, incorrupt, beneath the city of Constantinople, guarded by secret crypto-Christians. And they say that slowly but surely his sword is being pulled out of his sheath. And once it's fully out, he will wake up, and he will ultimately, in the ruins of Constantinople in the Third World War, he will emerge and he will lead for 30 plus years a sort of revived Orthodox empire where Orthodoxy will be preached around the world. And then after him, then the Antichrist will come, and things will unfold in that direction. But we know, according to the scriptures, that the true faith, Orthodoxy, has to be preached to all corners of the earth before the end times can really commence. We know the katechon is spoken about in the New Testament, this restraining figure who we understood to be the Christian Roman emperor, who is kind of holding back the reign of Antichrist and evil on the earth as a divinely kind of anointed figure. And even, again, like I mentioned, in Jewish eschatology, this figure of Armilus is somebody that they even predict will come and will ultimately be killed by the Antichrist. And, you know, people talk about how, I was just doing a show about Georgian prophecies and whatnot, where St. Gabriel talks about how St. John and the prophet Elias will be shown on TV when they are preaching the gospel before the times of the Antichrist, that it will be that vivid and seen. So obviously, most people think this stuff sounds outlandish and insane, and I can't necessarily blame you for thinking so. But, you know, Metropolitan Neophytos, Elder Ephraim, who I've benefited so much from his spiritual children and his monasteries, the bishop himself, who ordained Elder Ephraim, a modern saint, to the priesthood, told Elder Ephraim and his spiritual children that he saw St. John Vatatzis with his own eyes sleeping, and this is in the 1980s, that the sword was almost out of its sheath. It was like centimeters away. So do with that information what you will, right?
Yeah, I think diving more into some of the prophecies of St. Paisios, I'm going to pull this up on the screen because this would be a good admonition going into the season of Lent. This is more about some of the signs the end times are approaching. So this is from St. Paisios. He says, "Oh, my brethren, in those times the love of many will cool, and there will be a lot of sorrow, attacks of the nations, and immigration of the people. Great disorder, waste, negligence, indifference to the salvation of the soul. Almost all people will be rolling to run at festive dinners, parties, revelries. They will run to enjoy the earthly things. People will hate one another, will all be very sluggish. They will be sluggish in their Christian duties to the superlative degree. They will be willing to judge the others. Unbelief, hatred, enmity, envy, quarrel will have the first place in people's lives. Let us stand with fear of God and be attentive in the fulfillment of our religious duties, fulfilling all of the virtues. Let us take care of filling our vessels with oil. As long as our soul is still in the flesh, our candle must be lit up. It has to be lit. It has to be lit all the time of our life. Let it be lit before we close our eyes. Let our candle be lit unceasingly. The vessels are the powers of the soul that receive the virtues. The oil we have to pour into the vessels is the practice of all the virtues. The lit candle symbolizes the mind who can receive the holy grace. The soul that will become light bearer will enter the kingdom of heaven together with Jesus Christ. I repeat this: the soul that will have the candle lit like the 5 virgins will enter together with Jesus Christ into the kingdom of heaven." So a little bit of an admonition as we enter into the season of Lent, saying towards the end, people will become slack in their religious duties. So throughout this season, attend the services, do your morning and evening prayers, the very basics. Another prophecy of St. Paisios, he says, it will be so rough in the end times, people will be saved if they do their morning and evening prayers. That's how bad it will get. People are going to get saved if they do their morning and evening prayers. That's how bad the faith is going to get towards the end. So stay vigilant. Keep your oils, keep your lamp well oiled.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we can do, rather than falling into some kind of despair or, watching the news frantically, waiting for the ball to drop. You know what you could do as an Orthodox Christian? Remain in prayer. Do your morning and evening prayers. Trust in the Lord. Trust that his judgment is greater than even our own ability to prepare ourselves for this. So,
and pray for your loved ones, and even more than that, pray for, and it might sound silly, but pray for some of these evil people. Pray for Benjamin Netanyahu, pray for Erdogan, pray for, like you said, Patriarch Bartholomew, pray for pray for repentance for the people like Eldris Galactia, for example. Father Peter hears in Uncut Mountain Press, they have a huge translated work about her life and her miracles and her prophecies coming out very soon. And apologies, I'm going to butcher the exact quote, but she says there are these three major things that are leading to this evil in the world. And one of them is black magic and Satanism. Another one is evil, deranged sexual, abnormal practices happening both within and without of marriages. So pray for people that are conducting satanic activities. Pray for the people involved in this Epstein activity, because I may not be able to love those people. I may not be a pure enough Christian to actually show love for these people, but God loves them just as much as he loves you or me. So we need to, it might sound dumb and it might sound like a waste of time, but it really isn't, to pray for even some of these people that we know are both our enemies and even the enemies of God.
Right. Yeah. Pray for Pope Respecter on X.
Pope Respecter, Ethan Wayne, any number of
I think,
other
dude, I
characters.
think about that actually. I do actually pray for Pope Respecter because he legitimately makes me mad. So and the guys that actually get under my skin a little bit, I actually do pray for them. I'm like, oh, okay. Like most of the criticism stuff, I don't really care. It's like whatever. But he's like a special breed. I have to block him every now and then. I'm like, maybe I'll unblock him and engage with this guy for a little bit. And then I'm like,
someone in chat's already saying it. Got to pray for Father Evagrius as well. He knows what he's doing with that pink phone case and his fruity pose in his profile picture. He's an expert rage baiter. I'll give him that.
I don't want to speak bad about clergy, so, but I get it. That some people will mention, yeah, pray for them. That is the right approach. Certainly pray. Just like anything else, that's the hardest part about, being an actual Christian, doing the, practicing the virtues, is praying for those who get under your skin. So practice that more, and, you'll be better prepared. Sigismund sends in the Monopoly money. I don't know what that is. Will the Ukrainian theater close first? Thoughts before, I guess, the end, he's saying.
It's an interesting question, because I do ultimately think that whether it be through the current military campaign before the Turkish front starts, or it is an initial response to that and then expands, Russia needs to take the entire Black Sea coast. Anything short of that would be a Pyrrhic military victory at best. So I don't see the conflict coming to an end until that is achieved. Even if there is some kind of peace or ceasefire, that would just be kicking the can down the road for this. I mean, look, the videos that you were showing, Ben, I mean, that's not those cultural wounds, that's not something that just goes away with a peace treaty. This is a deep thing that's unfortunately only going to be decided on the battlefield, as far as I can tell. And that's the kind of things that these deep, dangerous wounds leave. So it's a good question, but no, I think ultimately, even if there is a ceasefire, it will still meld into this broader conflict, because again, it's not the same as World War I and II. The presence of digital media, the reality of the propagandized, mutually assured destruction, nuclear doctrine of the United States. World War III is not going to be the same as World War I and II. And something I'm about to read from Elder Joseph of Atapidi here. He argues that technically we've really been in World War III since 2008. So it's an interesting, different type of analysis.
Interesting. Yeah. Here's an interesting comment from Rebecca. Thank you so much. I tend to get anxious for my babies when hearing this stuff, so all the encouragement is helpful. Yeah. Well, one thing, I mean, don't fall into despair. That's what the demons want. The demons want you to fall into despair. That's not from God. So keep that in mind if you begin to listen to things like this, or anything geopolitical related, or even politics within the church, and you start to blackpill or become fall into despair. These are temptations from the demons, so you should not listen to them. But also, on top of that, some of the prophecies of Saint Paisios, I went through a binge of just studying his prophecies at one point in time. And one of the things he says is, when we get into this kind of beast system era, where we have a singular ID for all of our payments and things like this, and the Orthodox Christians cannot accept that digital ID. If you want to be a faithful Orthodox Christian, you cannot accept that. You cannot put your information into the system and use it in order to buy and sell. The only way that we're going to be able to get by is by having Orthodox communities that live off the land for a period of time. But even St. Paisios says that this is going to be a short period of time. Now, again, this is according to his prophecies, right? So, I mean, just something to think about, which is why it's super important also. I'm not saying this is going to happen within our lifetime. And again, we're talking about the prophetic. This is why it's always important to be active in your church, not just online. Like the online stuff is great. It's a great supplement, but it's no replacement for being active in your local parish and knowing the people that are local to you. Because, you know, how are we going to get through any hard time if we don't have people local to us that we can lean on, that are our brothers and sisters? If we're just all alone and we're isolated and we've only got online friends, what are you going to do? Are you going to call, you know, whoever you watch on YouTube to come and help you out? You have to be plugged into a local church, attending divine liturgy, attend to, you know, go to the coffee hour, make friends, have people to do life with. This is all very, very important. Don't let modern society take that from you, because that's exactly what they want. They want us separated. They want us isolated. They want us not talking to each other in real life. We are stronger the more active we are in our communities, helping the parish, living the actual religious life, and, you know, attending the divine liturgy and, you know, Vesper services and things like this. You really can't do Orthodoxy without that piece. So foster that first. Don't worry about the rest. When it happens, it happens. There's nothing you can do about it. So foster that piece. Focus on your faith. Focus on growing closer to the people in your parish. Form actual bonds. And then, you know, leave the rest into God's hands. I mean, that's exactly what St. Paisios said, right? He said, don't worry about whether you'll live or die. Trust God's judgment. And honestly,
look, God has you right where he wants you. You know, I always say, you know, a lot of times, you know, a lot of people become Orthodox like, oh, wouldn't have been great to live in the Russian Empire. Wouldn't have been great to live at the best times of the Byzantine Empire. Wouldn't have been great to live at the times of Christ. Well, God made you for no other time than this. So I'm glad that I exist at no other time than now. We live at the cusp of some incredible things, I think, that are about to happen. And Metropolitan Neophytos says this, and don't take this out of context. If this scares you, just turn me off. I'm just a guy, right? I'm no priest. I'm no bishop. I'm no prophet. But Metropolitan Neophytos even said that many of the people, if perhaps God deduces that you won't be able to handle the trials that might come with all of this, he'll take you before. He says this. He says that if you can't handle it, he'll bring you home to him if that's the best thing for you. And if you're still here for this to happen, that means that you can handle it. That means that he meant for you to be here. And for some people to, you know, people always ask, like, should I stay in America? Should I move to another Orthodox country? Look, you can do that, but we're going to need Orthodox people here to evangelize the people here when bad things start to happen, when the government turns antichrist, when natural disasters occur that are so dramatic that, you know, we won't be able to reform law and order immediately. This is, you know, this is your homeland, this is your country, and this is, St. Paisios said, one day America will be holy. And just in the past 30 years, Elder Ephraim has built 17 plus monasteries here, just Orthodoxy coming out of almost nothing. So there's so many reasons to be hopeful. And let's be honest, with how quickly people are spiraling into atheism and apostasy, like, is war so much worse at a certain level? Look, I'm grateful that I haven't experienced war. I'm not saying I want to experience it, but God is looking at all of this thinking, I want to protect these people, but if peacetime is if this is what it leads to, if 100 years of peace, which is what we've experienced past World War II, leads to this, then maybe it's time for another war. And that's why repentance is so important, obviously.
Yep. Yeah, if you want to avert God's wrath, focus on your repentance, right? This is a great season to do it in. As we prepare for Lent, you know, make sure you're doing the basics. What are the basics of the faith, right? Keep your Wednesday, Friday fasts, okay? Do your morning and evening prayers. If you're not doing that as a baseline, maybe there are some things to address. You know, and honestly, to be completely honest with everybody in the chat, I could probably do a little better at doing my morning prayers. I got my evening ones lined up, but sometimes in the morning, I'm like, you know what, I'll do the Trisagian prayers, and I'm like, that's, you know, I try to pray throughout the day, but that is something that I have to work on, is just the discipline of doing the morning and evening prayers. This last Wednesday, I realized, like, halfway through the day, I was like, dude, I just had cheese grits. What am I doing? like I had whey protein. What am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, and I realized I course correct after that, but you know, it's a part of the process of, I guess, you know, getting into that discipline. Beauty of the struggle, $10. Last minute shekels for showing up to the stream late. Let's make Israel was real. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother.
Let's see. Okay, what was I going to dive into next?
I was going to read this. I was going to read this really quick. This is from Elder Joseph of Vatopedi, who reposed in 2009. He was a fellow spiritual son of St. Joseph the Hesychast. He was a co-struggler with Elder Ephraim of Arizona. Here he is right here for anybody that is curious. And he had some incredible prophecies about things, very detailed, very in-depth. And this man, again, he was the abbot of Vatopedi, which is the largest, technically, well, I think it has the most monks. So it's one of the largest, tied with the Great Lavra on Mount Athos for being the largest. And it says here, the elder initially referred to the coming economic crisis, saying that it would erupt in the following days, that it would be artificial on a global scale, causing the collapse of the financial system, as indeed happened starting from America with the Lehman Brothers. The Third World War will occur in 7 successive phases and conflicts and will gradually escalate. Each individual war will be more intense than the previous and will involve more and more nations, while there will be intervals of peace. The people of countries at war will run and plead with God, but they will not be heard. The nations living in non-warring countries will not take example and will not be corrected by the misfortunes of their neighbors, but will seek war and destruction to avenge their enemies. The war will eventually spread gradually to a global scale. Ruins, destruction, famine, disease will dominate everywhere. The first war is between Russia and Georgia, which happened in 2008. Russia will face another provocation attack from Georgia, and this time Russia will completely destroy it. Georgia is the America's buffer, blah, 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 blah. This talks about what we were listening before with St. Philomenos and St. Gabriel regarding Georgia. It says, while the Russians are fighting there, the Ukrainians will be stirred up by the Americans and will provoke them intensely. Then Turkey will allow American ships and aircraft to pass through the Dardanelles and its national airspace to strike the Russians. That will mark the countdown for the Turks. The Russians will very quickly overrun the Ukrainians and be enthusiastically welcomed into the cities. Over Ukraine and the Black Sea, Americans and Russians will engage in air battles for the first time, and the Russians will overwhelmingly prevail. In Turkey, a dictatorship will have been imposed. The Kurds will revolt, creating a front against the Turks. What will follow is global economic turmoil. Regarding the economic crisis in Greece, he said the following: it would be good for everyone to ensure that they save what is necessary for their family. The crisis will have fluctuations. And people know 2008, these other times, Greece had the crazy debt crisis, which if we just learned from the Epstein files was entirely nonsense and was about propping up bad loans that were given out by French and German banks. And because people always ask, like, how could Turkey attack Greece if they're both in NATO? Well, first of all, they still have all sorts of conflicts to this very day. And two, Europe is learning that the EU, Greece is learning that the EU and NATO don't want anything to do with them. The people, and a lot of prophecies say that the Greek people will at one point literally throw out the corrupt politicians that are keeping them in NATO and the EU. And if Turkey turns towards the pro-Western side and is full NATOist, then it would make perfect sense why the two countries' historical enemies would clash.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question from John Daniels. He says, when you guys say morning and evening prayers, you talk about literally every prayer. With the prayer rule, you have to get a rule set by your priest. So don't do anything of your own volition. Don't go out of your way to set your own prayer rule. You'll either burn yourself out or you'll set too little. So get with your priest. He knows you better.
And if your priest is going to tell you to do the morning and evening prayers in a specific book, just make sure the book is, make sure the book is more what you can handle. Like for a long time, the two prayer books I use are the Little Red Prayer Book from the Antiochian Archdiocese and the St. Tikhon's Prayer Book. And for example, the St. Tikhon's is a little bit longer, but I have the Little Red one for traveling. And when I'm, I can still do the full prayers, but it's not quite as long. And I try to build up to the St. Tikhon's one. I also use that for the pre-communion prayers as well, because that's the Little Red Book has a really good pre-communion prayers. So those are the two I have. But yeah, the Jordanville one, those are long. So if you're going to ask your priest to bless that, be prepared. It's like 40 pages. So
yeah. I use the Red Prayer Book as well. I was using the one from the Holy Transfiguration Monastery, the blue.
That's a great one.
It's super long.
Yeah.
I did that before. People were telling me.
My roommate uses that one, so respect to him.
Yeah, I did that before. People were telling me, like, you're not supposed to just do a prayer without a blessing. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'll go figure out what he wants me to do. So, anyway. All right, let's keep going. I want to pull this up. So this actually, let me add this to the stage. Back into the St. Paisios prophecy here. This was On Our Times by St. Paisios, if you want to read more into this. But this talks more about the digital ID system and what this will look like in the 3.5 years, the persecution that we're going to face under the system. So this is what it's going to be like for the Orthodox Christian in the beast system. The mark will be an image which will first be placed on all products. Then people will be compelled to wear it on their hand or forehead. Little by little, after the introduction of ID cards with 3 6s, after the creation of a personnel dossier, they will use cunning to introduce the mark. In Brussels, a whole palace with 3 6s has been built to control a central computer. This computer can keep track of billions of people. We Orthodox are resisting this because we do not want the Antichrist. We do not want dictatorship either. The most we can suffer is martyrdom. There will be 3.5 hard years. Those who don't agree with the system will have a rough time. They'll constantly be trying to imprison them using any pretext they can find. They won't torture anyone, but without the mark, it'll simply be impossible for a person to live. You're suffering without the mark, they'll say. And if you had just accepted it, you would have no difficulties. For this reason, by learning to live a simple, moderate life here and now, you'll be able to get through these years. By getting a little bit of land, raising a little wheat, some potatoes, planting some olive trees, keeping animals of some sort, a goat or chickens, the Christian will be able to feed his family. Stockpiling is of a little use. Food doesn't keep for long before spoiling, but these oppressions will not last for long, 3.5 years. For the sake of the chosen, the days will be hastened. God won't leave a person without help. Tomorrow thunder will strike, and the brief dictatorship of the Antichrist, Satan, will come. Then Christ will intervene. He will give the whole anti-Christian system a good shaking up. He'll trample upon evil and turn everything to good use in the land. And here's the scary part. And if someone receives the mark unknowingly, it would be better to say uncaringly. How can someone be unknowing when everything is crystal clear? So that's how clear this mark is going to be, extremely clear. And if a person doesn't know, then he should become interested and find out. By accepting the mark, even unknowingly, a person loses divine grace and gives himself up to demonic influence. When a priest immerses an infant in the baptismal font, the infant receives the Holy Spirit without knowing it. Divine grace begins to abide in him. Some people will say, what is destined by God to be will be. What business is it of ours? They can say whatever they want, but in reality, it's not like that. Unfortunately, some modern priests will diaper their flock like infants to keep them from getting upset. What's going on today isn't important, they say. Don't be alarmed. All you need is to have faith in your hearts. Or they scold, don't speak on that topic about ID cards or the mark of the beast. It will just upset people. If they were to say instead, let's try to live more spiritually, to be nearer to Christ, and to not be afraid of anything, you see, the most we can suffer is martyrdom, then at least they'd be preparing their flock for the coming tribulations. Knowing the truth, a person will begin to mull things over and shake himself out of his sleep. What is going on will begin to cause him pain. He will begin to pray and to be on guard, so as to not fall into that trap. What do we see now? It is bad enough that cunning interpreters of Scripture are commenting prophecy after their own fashion. They're representatives of the clergy, but they are more cowardly than lay people. So it's talking about the this is a prophecy by St. Paisios, if you're just tuning in. But basically what it's going to be like for the Christian under the beast system. Even St. Paisios predicting some of the criticism that people who even talk about this stuff will receive from the church, things like this. So again, 3.5 years, better to have some land, some chickens, some crops, so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, this is what St. Paisios is saying. So
this is from a similar line of thinking from St. Gabriel of Georgia. Someone asks him, if we don't want to receive the mark of the Antichrist and it is forced upon us, what will help us then? He says, for example, if a virgin was raped against her will before the Lord, she remains a virgin. So it will be in the time of the mark. The Antichrist will not establish his throne in Georgia. There will be fewer persecutions here than elsewhere. It is written in the New Testament that persecution will be everywhere, and woe to him that changes the New Testament. The time will come when we must go to the mountains, but do not go alone, or the unclean will throw you from a cliff and defeat you easily. Go in groups to the forests and mountains. So he's saying, obviously, the mark can't be forced upon you in that way. It will be a personal denial of Christ to accept the mark. So the idea that someone holds you down and puts 666 on your forehead or whatever, that's not you apostatizing and you're going to hell. It's it will be something that it so perfectly encapsulates the rejection of the Christian worldview, allowing you to then buy and sell within the system that, yes, it will be hard to resist, but it still will be clear apostasy. That's at least what every saint and every spiritual son of a saint that I've met has said.
Right. And our goal as Orthodox Christians until that time is basically to cultivate the virtues so that we're better positioned to be able to deny that temptation. Even if it results in our own martyrdom, right? Like that's our goal. And that's what you could do. That's exactly what St. Paisios says. He says you should be focusing on acquiring the virtues. This is our preparation. This is the calm before the storm, and instilling this into our children, raising them strong in the faith, and setting a good example for them. So if you have children, if you're, concerned about whatever, the best thing that you could do in any situation is become a better Orthodox Christian, and serve more in your parish, and, stick to your prayer rule, just like St. Paisios said.
No, it's true. And many of the people that, I keep losing my train of thought because I'm thinking of so many different things at once. But what was I about to say? Yes, that's what it is. St. Paisios, he said that the COVID vaccine and these sorts of things are a type precursor to the mark. And people might not like this, but people need to look at how they responded to that, how their communities responded to that. And if they completely conform to the world in that way, then perhaps some work needs to be done for them to be prepared for when the test is real and when it isn't. And again, this is controversial as well. Father Turbo, I saw him just saying this with Jay, that the fact that we still haven't seen any acknowledgement of wrongdoing or repentance after the COVID nonsense shows that maybe people haven't entirely learned their lesson. And Metropolitan Theophitos made it clear that getting the vaccine, in a lot of ways, like, this is something that does need to be repented of, not just because you didn't trust God, but because there was aborted fetal tissue in these things, and it was made from aborted babies. So look, I'm not your spiritual father. I would never tell you what to do, but Metropolitan Theophitos, who really saved my faith in the midst of the COVID nonsense, much like Father Peter and others did as everything was going crazy, he does say that it's a sin, and you should ask for forgiveness for it. And I even visited holy monasteries in Cyprus that have prayers that they read over people that visit them that did take the vaccine. So this is a very real thing. And again, this isn't to alarm people, but Metropolitan Theophitos gave this quote that I was remiss not to give at the beginning of this episode. He said, "We have entered a very dangerous year. It may be the supreme and prophesied year of the world war. Since we do not correct ourselves through peace, we will be corrected through a difficult operation." And he said this January 2026. So that's where we're at right now. And March 1st, March 2nd, actually, I think it's March 2nd and 3rd is the beginning, or rather that is the celebration of Purim, the Jewish holiday of Purim, where they commemorate the events in Esther, where they prevented themselves from being slaughtered by the Persians. And this is something that many large world events happen on the eve of Purim for reasons that I could allow maybe you guys to speculate on. But many people, myself included, since about September, October 2025, have been saying that Iran War Part 2 is coming February 2026. And so February 2026, eve of Purim, I wouldn't be surprised if things really went down around that time. So you heard it here first.
So we'll see what happens in that regard. But this has been an awesome show, man. I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you want to plug before we wrap up here?
For sure. If everybody could check out worldwarnow.co, that is my home base. That is where you can find everything, all of our weekly shows, paid, not paid. It's all on there. And if you want to get behind the paywall for $7 a month, there's some discounted rates as well. If you do the yearly subscription, you can do that, and you get access to hundreds of hours, hundreds of episodes of our Ether Hour show. That includes interviews with Father Peter Heers, Abbot Trifon, Levan Vasadze, the recent godfather of the heir to the Georgian throne, who we just interviewed, Gabriel Doroshin, the 8th great-grandson of Tsar Nicholas II, who does bear a striking resemblance to Ben here. So be sure to check that out. It was a very episode I'm very proud of. My interview with Metropolitan Mitrofan of Gorlovka, one of the bishops in the Donbas, whose cathedral has been struck many times by the Ukrainians. I had a chance to interview him, as well as all sorts of other really, really fascinating guests. So be sure to check us out there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I go live there. I'm live on Substack, YouTube, and on X every Tuesday evening at 7:45 p.m. So be sure to check Central Time. So be sure to check that out. Just type in World War Now on YouTube and subscribe. That really helps us out too. You can follow us on X at World War Now _. You can follow me on X at Gnomerad. So that's GNOMERAD. You can find us on Telegram at World War Now Telly. And if all of that wasn't enough for you, if you listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can find us there too. So no excuses to not tune into the show as far as I'm concerned. But thank you so much, Ben. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, and thank you all so much for watching. God bless.